welcome everybody to MogTalk. If you're unfamiliar with MogTalk, it's a show based around the Final Fantasy XIV community discussing everything from Savage Raiding to Chocobo Racing. And today we're talking about World Racing one more time here to get the perspective. A lot of interesting people are coming into the game and playing Final Fantasy for the first time and actually raiding in World Race for the first time. And so we're going to talk about that a bit. Before we go too much further, I want to make sure you guys understand who we have on the show, so they're not just sitting here awkwardly listening to me talking. And we're going to start with Roger, actually, first. Roger, could you tell everybody who you are?
Hello, everyone. Great to be here. And I'm Roger. I am a raider from World of Warcraft in the top guild, and recently started getting into Final Fantasy. Did the Edens 1 to 12, the E1 to 12 Savage, before the expansion came out, and then we played as a team from Echo this year as well. First time doing the race at the same time as everyone else on release, and yeah, it was really exciting. Can't wait to talk about it.
It's awesome. Yeah, I'm turning myself up a little bit because everybody says now I'm quiet because that's just how mic checks go. Like everything sounds great and looks great until the show actually starts. So let me know if that fixes it, guys. And then next person on camera here, we'll leave Sfia last because he doesn't have a camera. Klops, tell everybody who you
are. First, I have a bone to pick with you, Frosty. First of all, I don't know where you got that WoW clip from. That is like you dug deep for that.
You want to know how hard it was to find that clip? I spent 10 minutes and went through your last 5 videos. Come on.
Okay, well that's like from like 3.5 years ago. But
okay.
Second of all, that death wasn't even my fault. That was somebody else late to click on the orb, so I died as a result. So you did me dirty there. That's not fair.
Okay.
Okay. What was your question? I'm Klops. Hi. Also Layla Bell. You probably if you watch MogTalk, you probably see him in the show a handful of times for raid conversations and stuff. I've been raiding in the game since 2.0. Been doing world progression raiding since 2.3, I guess you'd call it. So way too long. Took a little break in Shadowbringers, back in Endwalker. Played a lot of tanks for like 7 years. Now not tanking. Wild timeline.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, big excited to talk about things today involving Endwalker and talk to Roger about his experiences. Roger and I have spoken a little bit before. He knows that I'm always interested in what he's up to, so this should be fun.
Okay. And then last but not least, Sfia. Tell everybody who you are.
Hello, I am Sfia. I play caster for the group who won the most recent tier. I've been around the world progression scene for a fair amount of time at this point. And again, I've been on the show a lot, so similar to Klops' case. Also, similar to Klops' case, that was definitely not my fault how I died in that clip.
It was Shin's fault, I think. I think I saw Shin's fault. I mean, somebody's fault.
It was 100% Sindalf. The tank, he just brought it onto the group essentially and killed everyone.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to let you know that only you and him died, so if he brought it onto the group, I would assume everybody would have died, wouldn't they?
It's a proximity fall-off damage, and he just put it right next to the party.
Okay, I trust him. That's all right. Anyways, just to give you guys a bit of background here, Sfia, again, won the world first here recently in the most recent tier. Layla's group, you guys got like 4th, right?
Yeah, woohoo.
Okay.
I mean, yeah. So, we got 4th. We obviously want to do a little bit better, but given the circumstances that we put ourselves in, like not having played together in 2 years, there are some positives to take away from it. So that's what we're focusing on.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And Roger, you guys, of course, getting like world first in WoW before. You tried your first tier here, coming as an outside player. You guys were in like near the top 50 teams to clear.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's accurate, but I think we got 57th or something.
I have you down for 56.
I have you down for 56? There you go.
Yeah,
easy.
It's difficult to track the world race for Final Fantasy XIV, but that's the estimated number is the 56 one. But yeah, go ahead, Roger. Sorry.
Yeah, especially if it's off stream. Like at least we have the exact timestamp. But yeah, for sure. Nah, I mean, it was a blast. Definitely, I don't think we expected it to be easier. I would have hoped that we were in top 50, but that was my expectation. There were a couple of places where we slowed down, and eager to talk about it with Sfia and Klops to see from their perspective, right? Because I think on average we did as expected. P3S and P4S phase 1, we struggled more than we should have, I think, compared to other teams. But overall, it was a blast. We decided to go fully blind as well, because it's a lot more fun for us to do it that way. And also, I mean, realistically, not that we're really aiming to go for world first anytime soon, but if we get better and better, at some point you reach a point where there are no streams anyways to watch, right? Like if you're top 10, I don't know how many other teams are going to be ahead of you that are streaming. So at that point, it's better practice, I think, doing it fully blind, and you get to see where you're slowed down. Like I said, right? P3S, if we had seen the strategy as soon as we went in, it would have been obviously a lot faster of a kill. But yeah, we would have never known, like, oh, we struggled really a lot with firestorms, for example.
Right.
So yeah, it was a complete awesome blast, and the last boss, phase 2, I think probably is my favorite fight, even on farm, out of all of the bosses in the past. So yeah,
Really?
it was really
Out
cool.
of all
Surprising,
WoW
okay.
bosses, all Final Fantasy bosses?
I mean, it's hard, it's hard to compare the WoW bosses. It's very, very different. I would say from the Final Fantasy bosses,
Okay.
like from E1 to 12, I think at least it's definitely at the very top. Like I think they did a great job with phase 2. I loved it.
That's awesome. So I mean, like, one of the biggest differences, of course, obvious between WoW and Final Fantasy 14 is the time you have to invest into it is much smaller on Final Fantasy 14.
You talking about the actual progression portion
yeah.
of it,
Yeah.
or the preparation? Okay, yeah.
Yeah. While you're doing the race, that whole race experience
Yeah.
of just kind of knocking it out, was that kind of? Did you like that, Roger? Did that feel like kind of refreshing to you to have it really quick, or was it like, hey, this just wasn't enough, I want it more?
I think I definitely liked it, and especially the preparation part, because we didn't really do crazy prep from normal mode, which is a question I do want to throw to the other two
Sure.
lovely guests. We didn't try hard in normal mode, but we so there was very little time investment beforehand, and then the race only for us lasted. I think we killed it early third day. Could have killed it on the second day if we pushed, but we early third day, so that was perfect. The only thing is, if we were only playing Final Fantasy, I think maybe I would have liked a little bit more time, right? Like, because it feels, of course, there's the ultimate, but if you're only progressing for 2 days every 6 months, like the Savage tiers, maybe that's a little bit too short. Maybe not sure, honestly. I'm eager to see how we do in the ultimate, but it's gonna be
There's
a
no
different
wrong
beast,
answer to
yeah.
that question, by the way. Like, everybody has a
Yeah.
different feeling. Some people hate it, some people like it. There's really no wrong answers. So
Yeah.
No, but for us, I think it's perfect. It's perfect. Like if we're not necessarily maining this game, like this was been the best experience I could have hoped for. We don't burn out, and yeah, it's not too short. It's not 1 day. It was like 3 days basically for us, 2.5. So it was really good. It was really good.
Okay. So you were talking about prep time and everything, and are you more interested in what kind of Sfia and Klops did for their prep for the race?
Yeah, and I'm interested to know if they prefer it when it's normal mode unlocks before, or if they prefer no.
Absolutely
no,
not.
no.
Okay.
So
Definitely not.
go ahead. Whoever wants to answer first on that.
Okay. So normal modes are really boring, right? Like, if you go through the fights and actually do them, they're incredibly boring. They also have no enrages. So that means you do things like you'll spend an hour in one fight just doing the same mechanics over and over, right? Because you want to get super familiar with all the timings, the snapshots, AoE sizes, all that sort of stuff. Now, you have 2 weeks to do this, and they're sure the fights are cool the first time, but when you're on hour 60 in the first week of sitting in normal mode, doing the same boring old mechanics, like 3 of them over and over and over again, it is absolutely not a good experience. It's really bad.
Yeah, but the next time that mechanic happens, you stand over there. So it's exciting. And then the next time the mechanic happens, you try standing over there. So it's more exciting. And you do that for like 20 hours.
And what do you think about how much a tier that is like this with normal mode opening first compared to Savage being released at the same time? How much of a difference is it in terms of like how much does it help you tackle the Savage bosses? Is it like it cuts the Savage bosses by like 30%? Like you kill them 30% faster, roughly? Or what do you? Because you have all this practice, right?
I have my opinion, but I'll let Sfia go.
Yeah, it's really hard to have a solid number and say like 25, 30%. It's very case by case, but I think the bigger thing is more there's going to be less new. You know, when you're going through a fight and you're progressing it, typically at the start of the fight, they'll introduce you to a whole bunch of mechanics, and then you just sort of reuse those mechanics throughout the fight. Normal mode takes that first step and makes it a little easier. And the other thing is, even just the act of doing the normal modes on a release where there are normal and savage release at the same time, that adds like an extra hour immediately. So even if you're not counting the familiarity with the normal modes, you're extending day one by an hour or two just by virtue of having to do normal modes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Klops?
No, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think the normal mode, when you have the 2 week gap and you're just doing, you have the early release of the normal modes. Sorry, I'm tripping over my tongue. It definitely, in my experience, now I didn't do Eden's Verse or Eden's Promise last expansion at launch because I was obviously not playing the game, but my experience in the previous expansions like Stormblood and stuff, the first tier always, the first 2 bosses always go down faster when you had access to the normal modes earlier. I would say, like, if you want to like actually throw a weird number out there, like maybe 25% faster. I can tell you that if we're using a recent example, at least for us, the normal modes trivialized P1S. P1S was like, with the exception of the I can't remember the name of the debuff, the purple and the orange chain. What's the name of it? Whatever the debuff is that you open the fight with, where you have one close, one far, and it does the baits. With the
I don't know
exception
the name. I know the mechanic.
Yeah, I know the mechanic. I don't know the name. That you're gonna find out if you talk to me long enough. That's a lot this tier. I know the mechanic. I don't know the names. But for P1S, like everything but that mechanic was basically solved before you even zone in. Be it from normal mode speculation or data mining, like everything was basically good to go. So the big, like, because normal modes were so early, really the only thing that people had to solve was that purple and orange shit, and then figuring out what the purple crystals did in Temperance. People knew that purple crystals existed, but nobody really knew what they were going to do. It was just all speculation.
I think it just gives you a good foundation for those fights, so you know what to go in, and you already have a handful of theories about what they can do. And like TPS, I know for sure because we talked to him before. You guys had a lot of predictions. I mean, some of them weren't right, but some of them were absolutely right. And I'm assuming that helped you because you saw normal mode and you were able to make those predictions, right, Sfia?
100%. Like, we got most of our lead in the third fight, and a large part of that was just how kind of on the money we were about things we expected out of P3. A lot of stuff directly correlated across, but also you could kind of infer the way that the developers might go with some of the things that were in normal mode. And when you think about, or you've played the game for long enough, you sort of notice trends in the way that certain developers make certain fights, and you can kind of almost start to expect what is going to be in Savage fights. So that was like a really good example right there. P3 specifically was a lot of prep went into that one, and why we got a lead there.
So I want to.
Oh,
well, go ahead, Roger. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I expected you to mention maybe P4S Phase 1, because I thought a lot of those mechanics, especially the only really hard part I would say is the pin axis, right? And I was amazed. I heard the thing you you blasted through phase 1 within like 12 tries or something, like less than 15 tries. And I thought, okay, they must have practiced, because it was pretty obvious, I guess, that you get 2 of them at the same time in Savage instead of 1. So I was like, okay, they must have practiced a lot that part, and we didn't. So we kept wiping over and over on that. But you're saying P3S actually? Okay, interesting.
Yeah. P3 had the most curveballs in it, where it wasn't, you know, very similar to normal mode at all. But you could even, like, just from things like looking at the ground, you could infer what type of mechanics would be coming up next, because there are a lot of ground indicators which aren't used in normal mode, which you can always, like, they have what they're called, I think it translates roughly to sympathy lines. And Final Fantasy loves to use those in arena design. So, and you can think of like Shiva, for example, the big snowflake on the ground. A lot of those points on that snowflake are for very specific mechanics, like stand on this intersection for this mechanic. And so a lot of those things in normal mode of P3 didn't have a use, but they were very clearly for something. So you try to reverse engineer it, right? And think, what would this possibly be used for? Like the 2 squares that you see in 3 points around the room that are where you stand to get knocked back from the tornado.
Yep.
You could think ahead, what would this be for? Obviously the room's going to be divided in 3 in some way, and you know, you go from there and sort of work it backwards. So things like that's probably where the biggest thing in normal mode is, just trying to find out what's missing, but the process and the way in which you do that is kind of convoluted and not fun.
Yeah, I think on P3S, and I don't know if you want to maybe go boss by boss. I mean, I don't know.
Whatever you want to do, man. I want your questions to be answered, to be honest with you. So, do you have questions about particular bosses?
No,
Go ahead. Finish your thought.
Yeah, I was gonna say for P3S, I think, because we did a little bit of normals, right? A little bit. We doubled into it. And we had the predictions. I think the only ones that we had and that were kind of obvious, I guess, is again, I don't remember the name, right? The ability where it's either the small orbs or the big red orb.
The plume.
What's that? The plume,
something.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, we were like, okay, this probably is the same, but you don't get the graphics on the ground. That was pretty obvious, and that was easy for us. Like, we didn't really struggle with that too much. And the other thing was when the boss flies away, and then we saw that from normal mode, he has 3 heads, and we saw that only 1 in normal mode was, like, lighting up, and we're like, okay, we need to watch out for that. Those were the only 2 things. Yeah, that's the 2 that we got. Honestly, the place we struggled the most on was the firestorm. Like, we just... or the tornadoes, basically. Like, we definitely wiped a lot of times to that mechanic. A lot. I think that's what slowed us down the most. Because I think it's both execution and also figuring out the correct strat. Doing it blind, obviously.
So that mechanic
was a little
right
bit
there,
hard, yeah.
Yeah, that mechanic right there kind of is very favorable to people who have played this game for a long time, because everything in that phase is used in previous Savage fights. Living Liquid would be the main one. A3S long time ago.
He's done enough verse. He's done like he hasn't done.
Yeah, no, the tornadoes, we knew that you have the closest person. That was good, but like I mean, it's the whole phase. It's not just the fire, like not just the Elmo strat, let's say, that we didn't figure out. That part was not too hard, but the whole thing of like, oh, we should split up the groups first, because if it's the spread mechanic, we need to be 4 and 4. And how do you determine which light group goes where at the very start of Firestorm? That was like a couple of wipes here and there, right? Like, oh, we were 5 and 3, and then we had to soak together, and then the 3 people, one of them dies or something. Because I don't know, like, it didn't seem like it was very easy indicator to... It wasn't very clean, I guess, of how to spread out. I don't know. I mean, no excuses, really. I guess we just didn't play good as well. But definitely that's where we slowed down a lot. I think on average, the other bosses, we took about twice as much time as the top teams, which is what I expected. But on P3S, I think it took like triple the time, or maybe even more. I don't know. It was hard stack.
It sounds like the things that you were struggling with in P3 were actually largely to do with the amount you play together. So I know that my team, for example, has literally a Discord channel where we have assignments, and so you'll know if we have healer and range stacks, it's these people. If we have, you know, one DPS, one tank and healer pairs, they're in these allocations. If it's cardinal pairings, it's these allocations. Intercardinal, these allocations. And playing more and more and becoming super familiar with those really made that and P1 of phase 1 of P4 a lot easier as well, because all of it was about positioning and making sure you're exactly where you need to be consistently. That and just a lot of YOLO was really good in both of those fights.
Yeah, I think YOLO is very important for like a podium placement, right? Like you have to be comfortable YOLOing, but for like the purpose of tornado phase, yeah, just being comfortable, like Sfia said, with the different role groups, and having like default rules of if it's a mechanic that doesn't always spawn north south, like say for example the Fountain of Fires, if it's a mechanic that either spawns north south or east west, then kind of like E12S phase 1, you have like, okay, I'm looking at north quadrant or east quadrant, and those are my two locations, and just having those like default rule sets actually just carries over from tier to tier to tier to tier. So the fact that this was kind of your guys' first run together as a team, first in quotations are right, but the first like package run together, it's not surprising like something like that would slow you down. That's something that you just get comfortable with over time.
Yeah, and another thing I'm actually wondering is, did you know about the whole Astro insta healing everyone at the end of the fledglings phase? Because we also wiped a
Macrocosmos?
couple of times there.
We
Macrocosmos,
figured it out in the pool that we killed the boss.
yeah.
So
Okay.
Any
that's
like
really-
Astro guy is he's gonna salivate. Like the first thing he's gonna want to do is test that. So
Okay.
like it's not surprising.
And what about the fountains? Like that the healers just take all the fountains. Was that something you did? Or
We sucked at fountains, so we totally scuffed fountains in our progress. That's where we lost all our time in P3. We made the mechanic way harder than it should have been, mostly because we didn't. I think what you're saying, the healing buff, we didn't highlight that as being important in conversation. It was just kind of there, and we didn't really highlight it being, I don't know, like of any matter. So our way that we solved Fountain in Prague, not how we killed it, but how we spent like 80% of our Prague, was just a fucking disaster. It was like wormhole level of difficulty that we were doing for no reason, and it was all rooted in the simple. We broke the cardinal rule, and it like murders us to think back on it. But we broke the number one rule of always test proximity ranges, and we just didn't test proximity range in that mechanic, and that's like just pure rust. That's just us being dumb. So we were not baiting the purples on specific players. We were just adapting to wherever the purples spawn. What do they call them? The pinions, the purple pinions.
yeah.
So we had strategies that just adapted based on how the pinions spawned, and it was like wormhole level difficulty. And I don't know, like I don't know. It's just rust. Like we just didn't problem solve that properly. So like they fountains for us were a disaster. I'm sure for like Sfia's P3 was extremely fast for people who don't know. I think he is right that their P3 is where they got the big lead, and then a little bit in P4 door boss. But I think the other top 3 to 4 groups, none of them had as good of a P3. So what I have a question. Sorry to hijack for a second, but
real quick,
I wanted to ask
because you said it a couple times, I want to make sure Roger doesn't feel left out with the jargon. Do you understand what he means by wormhole level difficulty, Roger?
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Not really, but I understand that it's like you have to react to whatever is happening, and it's like too much math in your head, right? Like too many rules. I don't know.
Yeah,
What
it's
is
essentially a
wormhole?
mechanic where every one person needs to know 8 permutations. So you personally need to know the 8 different things you can possibly get throughout the mechanic. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So
That sounds spicy. Yeah.
I mean, it was just dumb. It's like Sindolf said in chat, and this is just us being stupid. It's just 2 years of rust, I think. But if it's too hard for PF, then it's probably not how the mechanic is designed. And what we were doing was like, there's no fucking way you PF what we were doing. So we were trying to brute force it a little bit, and it just kind of bit us in the ass. But the question I had for Sfia before I forget, because we were talking about normal mode, and he was saying how a lot of the things he speculated from normal mode existed in Savage. I'm just curious, kind of what he went into P3 speculating. Like, what are the specific things that end up being right? Because I know like what we speculated, and Roger has kind of already talked about what he speculated a little bit. But because you guys got such a lead in P3, I'd be curious to know what speculations of yours checked out.
The whole first phase, more or less, was
Mhm.
we gathered all that. I think most good groups would have figured that all out. That
Yep.
the Blackfires were going to be roll baited on players, and there were going to be 4 of them, and they would have 4 stacks, and there were going to be 8 limit cuts that were going to go out. So all of that section, like it took one pull. You see it, and then we had we already had a strategy. We had positions. We had everything planned out already. We expected that there would be spreads and stacks, obviously, because that makes a lot of sense. And then, what else was there that we figured out? The important things were really, I don't think anybody expected the tornadoes, but it was so familiar to all of us just because we've all played forever that happened pretty quickly. And Fountain of Fire, we spent a lot of time in Phoenix as well, so T12. So that helped with allocations and things like that as well. But outside of that, like, there's nothing really new. I mean, the teeth thing kind of is new, but like none of that's difficult, right? When you point one of them out, you point one of them in. That's just like a single pull type of thing. But yeah, mostly it's just we never really progged P1, right? There were a couple of times where you're like, oh, this comes next, we died to it, and then you never wipe to it again.
Well, I think the interesting part is, I think if you, I mean, I haven't talked to like Entropy or anything about this, but I would expect that kind of all the day one groups just deleted P1. It wasn't even part of progress. So where your lead came from, that's what's interesting to me. It mostly sounds like it's all just seeded in Fountain, and like I don't feel like the tornado phase took very long. Maybe you guys were a bit faster there as well. So it's just interesting to me, because I also just like to problem solve what made us take too long. I think a lot of it's just Fountain shit.
That and having good damage, so that even on the very first time we get to Enrage, the boss dies.
There were like no heartbreak enrages this tier. It feels like we can talk about that in a little bit, but the DPS checks this tier.
Yeah,
like, you just kill the boss when you see that you don't actually just die to enrages this tier. You just kill the boss.
Right.
Yeah, I want to say,
I mean, when the sorry.
Yeah, like I was just really chipping in real quick that the third boss I expected the enrage to be a little bit tighter, because the last third boss we did was E11S, and I felt like there you did like one mistake and then you were struggling already with the. I mean, we had minimum level when we did it, but here, I don't know, like we killed it 20 seconds or something before the enrage on the first kill.
Yeah,
I was surprised. I expected a little bit tougher.
So when I'm talking about having good damage, it's about how bad your kill pool can be. As in, I had a brink of death as a black mage. We had 4 deaths total, I think, a slew of damage down. So like being able to get through the fight with that much failure is indicative of good damage overall.
That's why damage
and the same thing. Yeah, and the same can be said for the first 2 fights, because you disrespect the hell out of those fights, right? Like we tank LB'd in Temperance, because if someone fucked it up, everyone was getting a damage down, we just tank LB'd it, make sure that we lived, those sorts of things, and you can get through that fight by just having good damage and just completely disregarding mechanics. You just brute force stuff. And you sometimes will just intentionally fail it, because if you get through it and you know the enrage isn't going to be tight and your group has good damage, why learn something? That's just a matter of consistency versus time thing there. But yeah, so that was actually also a really big deal. Killing, this has actually gone all the way back to, if you'll remember, FFXIV Klops? I don't think you were raiding with us then, were you?
I was 9th.
You were 9th, yeah. So in the third fight then, we got a little bit behind because, and essentially it was down to Entropy killed
I killed
Omega,
it on their enrage pull, and you didn't kill it on your enrage
and we
pull.
didn't. And that put them like an hour, 2 hours ahead because of that. And when you get to the third fight and the fight starts pushing 11, 12 minutes, getting that pull can be, 40, 50 minutes in just getting there and getting the consistency down, which is a huge deal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what Sfia's talking about, like, I can't highlight enough. It's super important. People talk about so this is a conversation we have in our team a lot when it came to like deciding what tanks to play for the tier. This conversation might be of interest to Roger, maybe not. But when we were deciding what tanks we wanted to progress with, we're looking at bosses 1 and 2, and we're thinking, these DPS checks are going to be easy. Do we want to take something like a paladin? Do we want to take something like a warrior? Like both those classes can sustain, very comfy. Their cover is great. Paladin having the extra raid CD, it's great. Like, yeah, but they do less damage. And the conversation always ended with, no, they do less damage because damage is king. And the better damage you have, you can like the difference between having. Okay, I don't want to say something specific and be wrong, but the difference in damage can sometimes be you can have an entire extra death and still make a DPS check. Like that's a big deal. That saves like 15 to 20 minutes of progress just because you chose somebody who does more damage. It's just always it's kind of unfortunate that like the conversation always ends and damage is king.
Mm-hmm.
And you're absolutely right. And I think our comp, I think we ran a similar comp with Sfia's group. We had I don't know. Actually, I don't remember. I'm sorry. Did you have also Black Mage, Red Mage, Bard, and Reaper?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we had the same DPSers. Not sure about the tanks and healers. We ran a Warrior and a Gunbreaker, and we also ran a Astro and Scholar. I don't know if.
Yeah, there's a couple things in there that aren't like. People will debate the tech slot a lot, and I think people will also debate the healing slots a lot. And there's the conversation about double melee versus double caster, but for the most part, your comp was, I think, pretty prog optimal there.
Yeah, the only thing that I was not told before, okay? So I switched. I was a big machinist pumper, trying to support the machinists that have been smeared in this community. I've seen it. Okay. Nah, but I was like, okay, let's play Bard. I mean, everyone's saying how OP it is. I mean, sure, you play with the meta. I did not know that the Warrior does not get anything from a direct hit. So I was like, my God, I was comparing like logs. And I'm like, why is my buffs doing like 150 or 100? Like, I don't know. It was doing way less raid DPS because of my buffs. And then I was told, oh yeah, Warrior doesn't like direct hit. I'm like, okay.
Yeah,
Good to know. Don't want to play with him again.
It's not like zeroing out on him, but it's much less effective. Yeah.
Yeah. Did not know that. Yeah. I mean, yeah. It's all good.
Do you think if you guys played the game a lot more, your composition choice would change? Because I know that a bunch of you guys can only play one job, right? Would you have had a different comp if you had the ability to? What would you like to have taken out?
Yeah, so we've switched a little bit. So as I said, I played Machinist. I played Bard this time around though. We had Tobo, who used to be tanking, but because Meres could not play because of the MDI, like a World of Warcraft tournament, for anyone who doesn't know. So for the second and third raid of Edens, we had a different tank. But now because Meres was back, Tobo switched and played Red Mage instead. But he also had leveled Monk, because the idea was that maybe our Black Mage plays Red Mage, and Tobo goes Monk, and we go like the full, because I think that was maybe the more meta comp, I'm not sure. But Reaper Monk and Red Mage Bard. But yeah, we just stuck with it. Scribe wanted to keep playing Black Mage, there was not too much time. Our tanks have played 2 specs each, I think. Frago has played Warrior, but he's also played Dark Knight. And our Meres has played Gunbreaker, but he's also played Paladin. I think our healers have not switched to another healer job. They've stayed the same. And our Reaper also played like a bunch of melee. I mean, absolute disaster. Samurai. Like the problem is like whatever he plays, I start hating that job. It's sad. Like he played Dragoon first, like leaping over here and there, a little bit dying. Then he played Samurai. He was like, "Bros, my uptime." I was like, I hope Reaper is a little bit easier. It's not. You don't have to adjust for the Reaper, and thankfully it was not that bad. So yeah, he played Reaper, blasting. Yeah, no, I mean, I think I want to keep trying new jobs though. I don't want to stay playing the same. So I might try Dancer soon. Not sure about progging on Dancer, but at least just knowing more jobs is good practice. You know what is available. If there are changes as well, you're ready to switch. Because if I didn't play Bard and I played Machinist again, well, at some point Bard will be good. I need to be able to play it. You know, so it's we're going to switch things up every time. I think a little bit here and there.
Yeah.
Not full swap though, because
Just do like
then
1 or 2 swaps every time and
yeah,
get people exposure.
keeping it fresh.
It's not surprising to me that you guys picked up on the double melee, the Reaper Monk being really strong. I know that almost every World Pro group actually ran that outside of a couple. But that comes down to like you eat the damage loss and make execution a lot easier by having a double caster. So yeah, that's kind of the thought process from us there. Was it the same for you, or was it more of just we're just going to play what we know?
I think it was more play what we know, because in the past it was also the melee raid defensive was kind of useless most of the time, but now they made it do 5% magical as well, right? The feint, I think it's called.
Yeah. Melee.
So I think we would have switched to it if Scribe was down to switch to red mage, we would have gone for it. It was more just not much time. Like it was really busy as well with World of Warcraft back then, and we just said it's fine. But obviously, yeah, triple ranged usually will be easier. I agree. Like there, either it's neutral or it's easier to play triple ranged.
Yep.
Especially when the whole tier is just spread mechanics, right? It just frees up
True.
so much space.
What I
Yeah.
will say is like P4S second phase, if there was going to be a tier where 2 melee was as brain off competitive as 3 ranged, that was the boss. It's a fucking target dummy. Like this I think is probably one of the best tiers for 2 melee in years. There is, with the exception of a few areas, there's very little places where melees have to use their brain. I think Pineaxe, if you're trying to be really, really speedy and do it in as few pulls as possible, there are some Pineaxe combinations that triple range just are going to save pulls over double melee just because, oops, both my melee went left. Oops, they stacked on each other and now they're dead. Like that literally just cost you a pull when it wouldn't have to. That conversation between your melee of I go left, I go right wouldn't even have to exist with the third range. So something like Pineaxe, yeah, but like the second phase, just a target dummy, just totally inconsequential. I think to have 2 melee. So if there was ever a tier for 2 melee to
Yeah.
compete with 3 ranged at a podium level, it would have been this one. But we let the
Yeah,
we let the stupid 3 range team win. So
we were really close to doing it. Yeah, I don't think it mattered too much in the end. By the way, because you started talking about Pineaxe, and I want to say a lot about that boss. But for P3S, I've seen a lot of people, and I think justifiably, are complaining how Party Finder is quite hard to do P3S. Have they ever nerfed a boss after they released it to make it a little bit more Party Finder friendly? Because I feel
very
like
rare,
it is
but
a
it has
bit.
happened.
Yeah.
I think once, right? A6?
A6 is the most notorious example. They gutted it. Let me think if there's. Is it just A6?
I think it might be outside of like bug fixes and stuff.
I think it's just A6. Unless I'm crazy, I think it's just A6. So the answer is very rarely do they ever do that. I guess if you look at historically, yeah, they really don't. I guess that would be the better. That'd be the answer, I guess.
Tough luck for the Party Finders. I don't know. It's a spicy one, yeah, especially for the first tier, don't you think?
Well, when the tier's designed to be killed and crafted, and then gear kind of just trivializes every damage check that was already pretty lenient, especially in a first tier, the only way that you don't get through it after 4 or 5 weeks of gear is like critical failure. Everything falling apart, everybody dies, because you can limp through those things now with the amount of gear that people have, and still kill the boss. So that's kind of the normalizer there, is that everybody just kills it regardless because they just do more damage now.
Could be. Yeah, I guess it's just I think P3S has a lot of that wipe potential, both in the fountains and in the because if someone doesn't soak their fountain, it's a wipe basically. The boss gets a buff, it's over, right? And in the firestorms, yeah, if someone dies, I mean, I guess if you do the Elmo strat, some people can die and it's not that bad, but
What is
yeah, I
the
don't know.
Elmo? What the fuck is an Elmo
Oh, you
strat?
don't know that? Oh, sorry. Sorry.
What is this shit?
El-
This community's naming of mechanics is wild to me.
Yeah, well, Elmo strat is where literally the physical range debates one tornado. The two tanks get every single other mechanic except one cone from the boss, which goes to the
Right.
rest of the group.
I'm familiar
That's
with
it.
that. Why is it called the Elmo strat?
Because
Because
the picture
initial
that's
diagram.
yeah, the initial picture has Elmo faces on the tornadoes. That's it.
What?
It's like, you remember, what was it, Spyro Strat in 010, it was called? It's the same thing. It's just somebody, yeah, it's like Dwayne Titan in,
Oh yeah.
in
What
E12.
the fuck is
Same
Dwayne
thing.
Titan?
It's people replace, like, they, instead of putting rocks, they put Dwayne Johnson.
Oh,
the
Dwayne
rock.
Johnson's face. I get it.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
clever.
So-
Okay, no, that one's clever. Elmo is just a. Why would someone put an Elmo face?
I don't know.
It's the Elmo, like, reveling in the fire picture.
Oh,
That one. Yeah, those are the tornadoes. Now it probably makes
the
sense.
Elmo
Yeah.
burn it all down thing.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm hip. I get it.
Hey man.
So what we need to do is the next time that we popularize a strat, put happy faces on them, like smileys, so then it becomes the happy strat, and then Mr. Happy gets flamed by the community for that strat, even though it's not his fault.
Yeah, every time you make a bad strat, just put happy faces everywhere, all over it, and just like completely screw it over.
Yeah, he won't mind.
No.
He won't mind.
I gotta say, honestly, to me, success as a podcast host is getting people on that can just talk for 30 minutes and I don't gotta say a word and get good conversation out of it. So
I forgot you were here.
Yeah, I'm here, just sitting here, nodding and listening.
Oh, we're live? Oh, my bad.
Yeah. I do.
Yeah.
Roger, do you have? I want to make sure all your questions get answered. To be honest with you, anything?
No, I mean it's fine. I mean it was a little bit your mistake for inviting me. You know, I can't keep my mouth shut. I apologize, but
Not a mistake at
Yeah.
all, man. I'm just gonna have you come on every show, dude. You'll just help me with every show. We'll call
Great,
it
that's
the
it.
Roger Talk. But no, I do want to ask you, some questions relating this to WoW a little bit too. And just your perspective coming as a WoW raider going into Final Fantasy XIV, what are some things that either surprised you or, was just obviously just you weren't expecting as a WoW raider coming in and raiding in Final Fantasy XIV?
It's a difficult question.
It's a difficult question. I mean, because obviously I've had some experience doing the Eden's raids, so it's not like I had some crazy big surprise doing the race together. When it goes live. I guess initially though I did not expect before playing the game to have simultaneously such a different raiding experience of how you progress a boss compared to WoW, and it being so. It feels so fulfilling, let's say, right? Like I get excited when it's a new boss in Final Fantasy, regardless of what it ends up being. So I always will be excited of, oh, let's see the new mechanic. You see a new mechanic, you're like, oh, what's happening? In WoW, it's a little bit, I don't know. It doesn't have that certain magic, I would say, that Final Fantasy has for us. And yeah, just how optimizing your rotation feels so much better. I think those are the two things. Like, it feels very different dealing with mechanics, and also the rotation feels way more satisfying, I guess. At least from what I've played so far.
Okay. I mean, is that a part of like, playing? Like you don't have that feeling going into PTR for WoW, like seeing the new bosses and trying to figure them all out, because you figure out a lot of stuff in PTR. I'm assuming with WoW, and you don't feel that same magic there.
I feel the magic of like I get really excited on the PTR, which we've actually been doing the last couple of weeks, by the way. So we've seen a lot of bosses. it's not the same though. I would say it's more, let's understand fully what's going on in the fight, because generally in WoW it's not like you wipe really if you don't do a mechanic perfectly. It's more like, you have a few people die, you just play the PTR as, because you only have 1 hour, and then you just sit there, and it's more methodical, more like, okay, let's understand every single thing, go through the logs, understand every mechanic, and try to come up with a strat. But it's not so much on the rails, let's say, as it is in Final Fantasy. In Final Fantasy, usually most mechanics, it clicks insta, right? Like, you know how they wanted you to deal with it, and it's perfect. In WoW, it's more like, can we cheese this like this? Can we cheese it like that? Can we... I don't know. You're always thinking of how you kind of abuse the mechanic and kind of make it very simple or min-max this or that. In Final Fantasy, it's more, how do we actually play this mechanic? How, like, what did the creator have in mind? I don't know. It's hard to explain it really, but it feels very different in my
Okay.
head how we tackle its boss. Yeah.
Okay.
So not to put you on the hot seat here, but just for out of curiosity, has your team decided that if there's no conflicts, you guys are gonna play Ultimate?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure. I mean, honestly, I haven't even
I guess
checked,
is the interest level
but
there?
yeah, I think so. I mean, everyone is super happy after we finished Prague. Everyone was digging it. I guess I just don't know if we will know the bosses that are gonna be in this ultimate. Maybe we need to go and do some old bosses before to understand
For
what's going
sure,
on.
for sure.
Yeah.
But the ones that would be
Yeah.
related are all they're not very long progression cycles. Like it wouldn't take very long.
Mm-hmm.
So it wouldn't be a huge time commitment. But yeah, you definitely would want to do that. Uh, yeah, I guess I asked that because some of the stuff that you're talking about, where um, you're talking about how when you're rating Savage, there's usually an intended design of a mechanic and a strategy that you can kind of infer from. If I was a developer, oh, this makes sense. Okay, everything, this square cube fits into square hole, circle fits into circle hole.
Mm-hmm.
um, and there's not like many other alternatives. However, in Ultimate, have you seen the TikTok of like the guy putting like everything into the square hole
Oh yeah.
cube?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. In Ultimate, it's more like that, where
yeah.
sometimes there's like way different. There's a ton of different number of solutions to get through a phase. Um, Whereas in Savage, yeah, what you're describing, it's a little bit more linear. So I really want to revisit this topic. Hopefully, you guys are able to do Ultimate as a team together, because in like 4 months or whenever it is, for hopefully only 4 months, I want to hear the follow up of your opinion on
Mm-hmm.
that, because I think they're very different.
I'm just scared how long it's gonna take us, honestly. Yeah, it might be a while. I don't know, but definitely no, sure. I'm excited. We didn't do a single ultimate so far, so
That's why
I
it's
don't
really
know.
exciting to me, because you have no
Yeah.
frame of reference right now. It's like the fact that you guys didn't do T or UCOB or UU, you have no frame reference, and that's why it would be Dragon Song would be like super interesting to see. What does it look like for somebody totally fresh?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I
Yeah.
can actually remember that very specifically when nobody knew what Ultimate was going to be when UCOB first came out, and everybody underestimated it.
Yeah.
Everybody did. So seeing what you guys would think about it would be very cool. We'll have to wait
Mm-hmm.
and see.
So does that mean, Roger, that your team isn't thinking about doing Ultimate, like one of the old Ultimates?
Well, not right now because we're super busy, but I think so I don't know if you're familiar with the WoW cycle, but
Mm.
this is the last year of the last parts coming out for this expansion. It's probably gonna come in like um I don't know, a month from now, maybe 3 weeks. We don't know. We're waiting to see an announcement. So once
It's
that's
wild
done,
that you don't
though,
know, by the way.
yeah, we have no indication, right? I mean, a lot of people are complaining in Final Fantasy because it got pushed back 2 weeks. We don't even get a date until it's 2 weeks
Yeah,
away. Yeah,
that's
it's
wild. That's wild.
yeah.
That would drive me insane.
This is going to be though the last raid, and probably there's going to be 9 months of like no content after that, or no new raid tier at least. So that will give us a lot of time. I think we probably getting out of that tier. We're gonna do the Dragon Song. I don't know if it's gonna overlap. Maybe we have to do it after everyone has cleared it. So we do the Dragon Song, and then probably we can squeeze in another ultimate afterwards. Since we will be hot, let's say, with having just defeated one. So yeah, and then afterwards, I mean, I don't know when the next tier is gonna come, the next Savage tier. Do we know roughly when is that?
I mean, you could expect it to be like in the summer around July or so if you were just going to guess, dates. They try to do
Yeah.
every 3 months, but it sometimes turns into 4 months if something
It
bad
honestly
happens.
feels
yeah.
like the days of 3.5-month cycles are gone. If I'm being honest, I mean, I don't know if other people feel this way, but just the way that their development cycles have gone, it's just the cycle has gotten longer, and it's just I think that's just gonna be here to stay. We're looking at 4 to 4.5 per patch. I feel
Yeah.
like it's just gonna be a very long process.
I think we'll definitely do either more ultimates after Dragon Song, or we might go back and do some older tiers, like Savage tiers. I don't know. I think it's I don't even know what the full name is, but I've seen a lot of people saying do
Omega?
011 or something. Oh, it's Omega. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I guess there's some good raids still that we haven't done from the
Omega's
past.
a banger. Omega's a banger. There are a
Yeah.
few downers in there, but I'd say it
Mhm.
has more bangers than downers. Let me think about that. Do you agree, Sfia? Banger to downer ratio of Omega raids.
Yeah, there aren't many awful fights in there. They're all pretty
I
solid.
think it's more bangers than downers.
Just to
Yeah.
let you know, Layla, your hand is like right there between your mouth and your mic in some degree
Oh,
here.
is it?
Yeah.
Oh, my bad. I was leaning. My bad.
That's all right. And your mic's also like way out there, but it's okay.
Also,
Oh,
Omega's really
yeah,
well
okay.
presented in general, I think, which is why people would want to see that from you guys.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it's just a blast, right? It's almost like I don't know. I really want to do them as well. It's not like, oh, we have nothing to do, let's do them. I'm hyped. Like it's yeah.
I hit my mic button. That's why it was so low.
Oh, okay. I was like, there's
Okay.
something there.
I rolled it all the way down. I can go real quiet.
Oh, don't screw with it, man. My
No, it's good here. It's good here.
Okay. I mean, my
Okay.
mic's already doing goofy stuff, anyways. But what were you saying, Roger? Sorry.
I need to ask something. Am I like why did they put I'm going a little bit back to the bosses that we just did, okay?
It's probably for the best.
P4S
Okay.
door boss, okay?
Mhm.
Why did they put the pinax right at the 2-minute mark? Can you explain this? It's so annoying. And did you guys actually use cooldowns in the middle of the pinax, or
We
did you
did,
just play
but-
it safe and use them after? I don't
If
know.
you're playing the enrage timer, you don't gain a use. Like if you're playing through the
Yeah.
enrage timer, you don't
Mhm.
gain a use. So we just delayed them till like the 220 or whatever when you're coming back in from
Yes.
the final PNX.
Mhm.
And so in Prague, delaying them 100p better play. In farm, that's not the case.
Yeah.
That's actually something that we kind of picked up would be the case when Zodiac came out. They're going to keep like our 2-minute windows for everyone now are super busy. So one of the most important things for preparing for this tier was getting really, really comfortable with operating under 2 minutes and making it just so you're not even thinking about it, right? But knowing that they're going to be putting mechanics at 2 minutes is just that's Final Fantasy, right? They love to put things during every 1, every 30, and every 2 minute. It just their fight design is like clockwork.
Yeah, they like. I mean, some of the skill cap of playing like a melee, for example, playing a monk right now, like some of the skill cap is just being able to micromanage a mechanic while doing, your 2-minute window and focusing on both things. Like they put those. They're probably cognizant of that when they're designing fights because they want that to be a part of the skill set of a player, doing damage while doing mechanics, and I think that's perfectly fine. It's just that, like we've said, you do also look to see, okay, do we even need a 2-minute here? If we delay it, what do we lose by delaying it? I think Reaper doesn't like delaying very much, but most classes can get away with delaying and it's okay. Like there are a few where it's a little annoying, but you pick your battles, right?
Yeah, I just don't know. Like, do you think they meticulously think about that? And also on the phase 2, the last phase, it also felt a little bit weird how the enrage is right at 8:15 or what is it? So you can
8:25.
sorry, 8:20. Yeah. Wait, 25? Is it 25?
Yeah, 25.
Okay.
I guess maybe 24.
Yeah.
It's like 24 to
I think
25.
it's maybe 1
27 or
second.
something?
Really?
Instance
Yeah.
memes?
It's there's still variants, but it's just
8:25.
much smaller
Okay.
than it was.
Ugh.
Yeah, but it like feels to be like, why wouldn't you just do 8:35 and just increase your health a little bit, put an extra AoE in there so everyone feels good popping their cooldowns at the end? Because right now it's like, well, if you send them on CD every single time without a single global delay, then you'll get about half of a use at the end, or maybe a little bit more. And it just feels, did you have to do that? I don't know. I wish
Yeah,
they didn't.
if you are Giga Gaming and you don't drift at all, you definitely get more than half at the end. And
Yeah.
I personally like that. See, I'm in
You like that? Okay.
yeah, I'm gonna play devil's advocate here. I think if they start catering kill times around comfy cooldown usage, just fucking like I'm reaching a point where it's like, why am I even playing my character? They're making things so
Mm,
easy. Like
okay.
at least
Fair enough.
give us some form of agency over our decision making for cooldowns. Like they've already homogenized everything to 2 minutes. They've already taken away that interesting aspect of like matching 90s and 180s and stuff. So if they then make everything 2 minute and make the fights like super 2 minute friendly, it's just going to be so boring to me. Like mapping out damage. So like the 25 mark, I do agree that it's a little awkward, but it's only awkward if you drift. If you don't drift, it's close to nice. You obviously
Mm-hmm.
lose out a little value of the 20 seconds because I don't think you're ever going to get unless you do. There's like fast cooldown openers you can do. You can like
Mm-hmm.
pop your cooldowns like one or like first global after pulling a boss if you wanted to min max getting a full extra use of something. But that comes at a cost, right? Like as you know, I mean, if you're not delaying your CDs and your opener by like 8 to 10 seconds, you're not going to be able to fit all your giga potency buttons under those buffs. It's just how some classes
Mm-hmm.
operate. So that comes at a cost, but having the agency of deciding, do we want to do a fast opener here? Do we want to do a normal opener here? Do we want to delay cooldowns? Do you want to play for an extra use? Like that's part of the skill set of deciding, mapping out your cooldowns. As soon as they start catering to the lowest common denominator of um, insert cooldowns here, big red flashing lights from the boss, it just
Mm-hmm.
loses all the fun to me.
Yeah.
They've kind of done that to a degree already, though, right? Like this is
Like I said, they're getting close
yeah.
to that, and that's bothering me.
This is more of an overall statement. Just the way that everything kind of functions right now on 2 minutes, I think, is a little dull when you think of how it used to be
It's
with like the
extremely dull.
combination
It's not a
of
little dull.
90s,
Don't downplay
180s,
it. It's extremely dull.
120s. Yeah.
No, it's extremely dull. I like can't agree more. I don't know where this whole anti 180, anti 90 community sentiment came from. I'm not blaming the community or anything,
Oh,
but
damn community. Oh god. Yeah.
that came out wrong. You know what I mean? Like everyone in the community complained about threes and 90s, and
I
I never
actually
understood
think
like why. Like okay, yeah, it's annoying, but does everything have to be convenient? You can be
I
happy in inconvenience.
I think the change was more for a fight design reason. If you have listened to or read a lot of the interviews with them about their raid design sort of philosophies, it's more to do with they specifically design fights around CDs that jobs have and where they should be doing damage. If you can remember the Eden's verse, yeah, the E6, Yoshi P apologized because Dragoon was so awful to play in that fight because they didn't plan around the timings that Dragoon would be playing with in there.
I think.
So
Yeah, go
that's
ahead.
probably
Sorry.
part of the reason that they've normalized all of that, so they don't have to make those decisions and be like, oh, how do we make this fight now fit the 17 different jobs which are going to be operating in different ways? So they just fucking shove them all in 2 minutes instead.
I think maybe if I'm thinking about it critically, I miss 90s. Maybe I don't miss threes, but I miss 90s. I'll just say that.
Hmm.
Okay.
Maybe some 45s. Where's the 45s? I have my songs, but Let's do something wild. Give me some 45s.
I think it's weird because in WoW there's not that much homogeny. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of classes that have 2 minutes. There's definitely some that have 3 minutes. And then there is usually like it really depends, right? Like they change that a lot. But the main thing is that in WoW there's not that much raid buffs, right? Like here the
Yep.
main thing is it's not really a cooldown that much. It's more like when do you pop the raid buffs that really matters. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I like that too much. I'll be honest. It's definitely I wouldn't want it differently, I guess, because now I'm used to it. But it's an interesting choice of having a lot of jobs have raid buffs, and you kind of play around that.
So
But
I
I don't
remember
know.
when the
Yeah.
I remember when the
Can you?
game. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, just want to ask. Sorry.
No, that's
But
fine.
would you prefer maybe to have wacky timings of every class has their every job has their own cooldowns, but you don't have this many raid buffs. You don't really play around that. You just play your own job. And oh, I have a 130, and you just do it solo a little bit when you're gonna pop your cooldowns depending on the fight. Would you prefer that or?
So what you're describing is a little bit how the game existed at launch. When the game existed, at launch, classes really only had personal buffs. We actually had very few raid. We had very little raid interaction. We had battle voice from Bard, which was an entirely different battle voice from what you have now.
Faux
Totally
Requiem.
different,
Yeah.
totally different Bard design because we had Faux Requiem with battle voice. Just totally different Bard. We won't even get into that. Whole nother show topic. But back then, like besides Bard, there was very little raid interaction. That got boring real fast. If I'm being honest, personally speaking, my opinion. Um, as soon as they started adding raid utility, like the first big one that they added to the game historically was Trick Attack in 2.4. It was a total game changer. The game, to me, playing your own rotation, and I'm gonna be careful how I say this because it might upset people, but I don't mean this as a negative, so don't take this as a negative. Playing your rotation is not difficult or engaging over a long period of time in this game to me, at least to me. The interesting part and the engaging part of the game has always been the team play and coordinating with somebody. Just because if I isolate my character, even in a universe where it had personal buffs back in the day, it was just not as fun to me as like lining things up into that 10-second trick, mapping my OGCDs around that guy. Like to me, that was way more fun and a bit of a higher skill ceiling. Um, Now, if we make it more extreme, because in WoW, I do understand what you're talking about because I've played WoW where there's a lot more things to manage individually. You have your trinkets, you have your class kit. You have classes have like three to four buffs sometimes that they have to micromanage. Um, if we reached that level of individuality, like 5 to 6 different separate agencies to manage, yeah, that'd be fine because that's the same level of decision making that we're having right now, except just on an individual level instead of a teamwork level. Um,
Mm-hmm.
my uh, pause is that I don't think the game will ever go to that because we don't have things like
No.
trinkets when we just don't have that kind of job design right now. So, in the constraints of the Final Fantasy ecosystem, I would prefer the team play aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And Roger, do you agree with that at all? Do you feel like would you want to see
Yeah,
that kind of? Go ahead.
well, no, really, I wouldn't want to see that because it's different, right?
Right.
Like,
Well,
I
that's
don't want
different.
to
Yeah.
do the same thing on both games. So it's definitely
That's fair.
interesting,
That's
but
fair too. Yeah.
yeah, I'm just saying that I think maybe that's a reason why when it's a rate buff, the developers might have a bit of a harder time balancing things out with also boss designs in mind, and that's why maybe they start homogenizing a little bit things.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That's it almost feels like a lot of the specs, with few exceptions, they can't really break out and do crazy stuff, because then they become, I don't know, like it's hard to balance, right? So would you bring a tank if they didn't have an immunity? I don't know. I mean, you can play without an immunity, of course, but it almost feels like every tank needs to have an immunity. Every physical ranged has this raid CD to damage reduction. I mean, right? What's it called? Troubadour? I don't know.
Troubadour, yeah,
Yeah.
the
That
Troubadour
one, yeah.
Shield Samba.
Yeah. So definitely a lot more the same across at least the what do you call like physical range and
Like a
a
roll,
melee
a job
or
roll.
roll. Yeah, like the roles are very similar in that regard.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's almost inevitable. I think. Do you think like in the past when it was a little bit more random timings on the group buffs, was it easier to balance? Was it not frustrating a little bit at certain times on fights? Like I can understand it's less fun, less
Yeah.
complicated, so you don't have to use your brain, but it's also less frustrating, right? Like it's a give and take.
It's a funny question because I'll let Sfia go in a second, but it's a funny question because you would think that the current philosophy of homogenization would be easier to balance, yet this is somehow some of the most imbalanced certain jobs have been. So I'm going to chalk that up to just development scheduling, just the fact that they had the Endwalker delay, they were time crunched, and then they went straight into holiday break. They probably didn't have their fine polish job tuning adjustment passover that they normally would. That's probably why we have the result that we do right now. But in theory, it should be easier to balance jobs more than ever right now.
Yeah, that's more or less what I was going to get at. Excluding the start of this expansion, there's been a very clear trend between homogenization within jobs and roles and overall job balance. Like people loved balance in Shadowbringers. Like as you got through it, it just got better and better. Stormblood was okay. Heaven's Ward was an absolute mess. But it's a trend that's followed. Right, it's just progressively gotten better. And I think, excluding a couple of outliers, again right now after 608, we're in a better spot than we were, but it's still not where it was last expansion. So we're kind of in an anomalous time right now in terms of balance and overall stuff.
Balance
it feels
really bad.
feels shocking to me, right? Like because they set themselves up to have very easy time to balance the jobs, but they really held back from doing so. I don't know why, honestly. I mean, is it to not upset anyone after they've already obtained some loot? They're like, oh, we don't want to change anything now. Like I was expecting, okay, you see normal mode. I think after normal mode was released, everyone saw who is doing the best. They could have maybe tuned a little bit some numbers, right? I mean, why leave the poor machinist in the dirt like that? You know what I mean? Or the dancers, the dancers even. Right?
Holiday
It
break.
was
It was holiday break.
what was it? It was like probably 90% of the teams must have had a bard, which is kind of sad. I mean, who would someone complain if they buffed machinist a little bit? Is what I mean, or nerfed bard a little bit.
Yeah, the other thing that was also imbalanced is just how much classes are punished by dying. They actually did a decent job at addressing some of the more obvious problems. I think the big fear going into, and Sfia can hijack this. I think the big fear going into Endwalker was what's going to happen to a summoner when they die. But they nipped that one in the bud really quickly, thankfully.
Sfia, yeah.
Job death is one of the things that isn't punished equally. And I guess that's where part of the discrepancy in, like, I guess their design philosophy, and I guess it's a budget thing for them in terms of power budget. But no, especially this expansion with death becoming more punishing with the removal of back on your feet. And the fact that everything is now 2 minutes, like everything is 2 minutes. So, and also I feel like burst windows got made a larger portion of damage. Would you say that's true? The overall profile is much more 2 minute centric, and that those windows are more important.
Super top
heavy. So that kind of compounds. So if you lose a burst window now, it's huge. All of that adds up in the way that jobs are balanced as well, right? Because most of the time people look at job balance, they look at it in the vacuum of an ideal run and really good players doing it, as opposed to prog applications as well, which are a little bit more nuanced quite often. And things like that actually make a difference.
The funny thing, because people are talking in chat about like Bard being punishing if you die. The funny thing is just how much more, and this is the problem that I was highlighting. You have a class that's kind of undertuned in Machinist going into Prog, and Machinist has such a rigid rotation in order to like keep it under lined up under buffs. If you die anywhere near that buff window, you're just fucked, and you're already on a job that's like that's underperforming. Um, so you have jobs that are doing more damage and are more comfy. So it's like, what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on the timing, right? Like, I think, let's say if any job dies at the 2 minute mark, let's say you also have a rate buff yourself, well, then you get rezzed. What do you do with that rate buff? Do you just send it by itself to not lose a usage maybe overall? Or do you just save it until the next 2 minutes, so you just have it sitting ready for 2 minutes not using it? Feels
Nine
very
times out of
awkward.
10, you just send it. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's awkward though, right? Like you want
it
to
feels
avoid that.
really bad, right? Yeah, but then the bard, I think, also can be really bad. If you just entered the song, then you died, then you get rest, and for 30 seconds you have no song, and you're like, okay, well, doesn't feel too good right now, you know? It's yeah, I don't know. It's
Yeah,
it's not too bad though. I can't complain. I think it's good. I mean, if you die, I almost forfeit. Like, okay, we die. We had people die. We're not gonna kill the boss. Like, it is what it is. Kind of accepted that. Yeah.
I do want to ask you, Roger. We talked a lot about Final Fantasy XIV design philosophy with Savage and everything else. How much of that can you kind of compare with the WoW side of things, and how much do you prefer some of the Final Fantasy XIV design philosophy over the WoW fight design philosophy?
Yeah. So it really depends. I have thought about something I want to share with you. I feel like Final Fantasy has a lot more clarity of like, once you get it, you get it. And I think also it's much smoother overall. There's only one mechanic which I thought was kind of weird this tier, and that was the balls on P4S door boss. I thought that was, I don't know what they were going with that exactly. I was okay, but the rest of the mechanics pretty clean, right? And the thing that I realized is they reuse the basic mechanics in Final Fantasy, right? Which is the soak, like you have the arrows, soak me, okay, or you have the flares, go out.
telegraphs.
Yeah, like it's like those, I don't know, 10 things that happen. Pretty much you'll see them every fight or every other fight. And then because those are used all the time, they're fully refined, right? Like they probably just copy paste the mechanic and it just works perfectly. So it makes it easier for them, because I was thinking, how do they make all these cool bosses, right? Like P4S, like Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, like what is this, right? Like this is Gigabrain. But they have the good base of, okay, how do we use the soak mechanic, or how do we make these tower soaks work? Let's come up with a creative way of using the base tools that we have. In WoW, you don't really have that. Every boss is like new complete IDs or spell IDs. They just rebuild the mechanic. Maybe they copy certain things, but it could be broken. It feels like they probably waste a lot of time with that. And they don't have those base core mechanics to work with. And I think I like that a lot with Final Fantasy, because it's like a creative way of doing the same mechanics. Oh, but now also you have to deal with the firestorms at the same time as you soak with a group. I don't know. It's because I was thinking, yeah, like I don't think that all the 5-head designers are in Final Fantasy, and there's no one in WoW.
They're just
Yeah.
working with a different tool set. They're given a different foundation to start building
Yeah.
from, and it's
Mhm.
yeah, I agree. It's like they've been given a box of Legos to build from, whereas maybe in WoW the designers have to go decide if they want to get Legos or if they want to get an Erector set. Is anybody even old
Yeah.
enough to know what Erector
Oh yeah,
sets even are?
it's
Okay, I
similar to
thought
Connects,
like I
right?
thought it was like ancient boomer technology here.
I was
Um,
thinking more like sandbox, working with sand castles and trying to make everything, but
like
like
they had like, so what you had Legos, you had like Erector sets, you had a uh what was the other one? What was the fucking straws?
oh
Connects?
no,
Connect?
Strauss
Connects.
or...
It was
That-
Connects,
that-
right?
Yeah, that rings a bell.
Oh no, maybe that was. Yeah.
It was
Connect.
Knex.
Mm.
Dude, Connects were my jam, by the way. Total fucking side comment. But anyway, yeah. Like as a WoW dev, you
Right.
probably have to go and decide what box to buy. But Final Fantasy, they just give you the box.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. They set up. I think they've set it up so that it's ready to just get cool ideas and they will work, right? Like you have. I don't know. It's also with the fact that it's only 8 man. You have two tanks, 2 healers. That's rigid. That also it just puts you straight on the path. I think what was it? When we're doing normal mode P2S, which I was not sure if I'm gonna like the boss. It was actually okay. But we're doing it normal mode. We're a little bit yolling, like, oh, which platform do we go? What's going on? But then once you do Savage, one of the platforms is gone. So then by limiting how much room you have, it kind of guides you to the correct strategy. So it almost feels like this, right? Like with Final Fantasy designing a bosses. Well, you have these mechanics, and you have 2 tanks, 2 healers, 4 DPS, and so you narrow down on how do you make it really cool with this foundation. In WoW, it could be, oh, I don't know, maybe we go 4 tanks. Oh, what if you go 8 healers randomly? What if you,
Yeah.
I don't know, right? It's way more wild, and it's not so much catered to the raid. It's more like, okay, let's throw these mechanics at the players, see what they come up with. Maybe obviously they have an idea of how you
Okay.
deal with it, but it's more, oh, I have a cool idea. Somehow I make it work. New mechanic, never seen before. Here you go, players, enjoy. And then it's more like, oh, this is broken. I need to fix that. I need to not allow an immunity to work here, or I don't know, something, right? Like it's a different process, I think, which is why the bosses in Final Fantasy have this refinement, right? Everyone is surprised, like, oh, they never PTR test, and the bosses are just work perfectly from day one. How can they do this? And I think a lot of it is because of how they've built their boss creation factory, let's say.
I think that's a really good take. I definitely agree. I have a question regarding the WoW side of things. Do you think do you guys have enough insight on knowing how when they're designing bosses, how much do they factor in when they're designing like a full raid tier of a normal 2 tank mythic raid, 4 to 5 healer, I guess well you guys
Mhm.
dropped down to 3 healers sometimes. Maybe
Mhm.
you've even gone to 2 before. But
We have, yes.
yeah. So I guess when the time calls for it. But how cognizant do you think the fight designers are of like a standard like 2 tank, 4 healer, 14 DPS raid composition? Does that
Yeah.
matter to them at all?
So almost every single boss will have a mechanic where you need to tank swap. So it very rarely can you solo tank bosses. It has happened in the past, but generally speaking, very rarely can you go less than 2 tanks. Very, very rarely. I can't even remember the last time we did it. And then generally, I think their hope is that you will need so much DPS to not hit enrage
Mm.
that you won't go an extra tank, but it's always something in our head, especially if we're progressing a fight and we're like, wait, will a 3rd tank make this a lot easier? We always bring that up. It's just usually it ends up not being that much worth, so you go back. But there have been a lot of bosses, like you just simplify so much, right? Like, if there are multiple bosses as well, like some fights we don't have just one boss, we have 4 bosses, 5 bosses. I don't know. It's crazy shit. Oh, sorry. Didn't mean to curse. Crazy. Oh my god. I don't know if this is PG.
No,
I'm sorry.
You're fine. It's fine.
I think I've
But
dropped like 4 F bombs. So
but there might be like a lot of fights are cancel fights. So you have multiple bosses, and then some tanks just do so much good damage as well. So you can get away with just getting an extra tank, and when you're 20 man, losing a DPS and getting a tank that does half or even more deep damage compared to a DPS, you're not gonna feel it that much unless the enrage is super tight. But yeah, generally they have it in their mind, to go back to your question. I think with healing, it's a little bit more of a hit and miss, but they do a decent job. Usually they'll add just passive AoE damage, unavoidable, just to make sure that you don't cut too many healers. That's a good way to guess if you can do less healers or not, is how much unavoidable damage is there in a given fight. But yeah, it's hard for them as well. Like I don't sympathize with them. It's very hard to be, oh, okay, they will do exactly 4 healers. A lot of times we play with the healers, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
We'll go 5 healers to play it safe on the early bosses. Why not? Or we'll go 3 healers on the last boss if we need more deeps. So it's a very tough thing for the developers. I think generally though they do have it in mind of, let's go 2 tanks, 4 healers, 16 DPS. 14 DPS. That's their initial thought process.
I mean,
Yeah.
do you like that being like a part of the fight still, like where you could maybe have it one way or the other?
It's definitely fun. It's kind of like what Klops was saying earlier with the cooldown timings.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, if they made it super rigid, maybe I would have been, it was fun to at least play with these ideas. Now you're taking it away. So I think it's fine. The one thing that I would like to see from them is going a little bit more in the route of the roles to make balance a little bit more easy for them. I think they have very hard time balancing the specs. So if you have something like, oh, you need to have two, or let's say you need to have 4 melee DPS no matter what, then you can also plan a bit your roster easier. I think that's a cool idea, but maybe cut down as well on the 20 man, go, let's say 16 man, and then be like, okay, you need to have 4 melee DPS, 4 range DPS no matter what. So you can never be like thinking, what if we just go full ranged? We don't even need the melee. Instead, what they've done is they've given specific jobs, let's say. I don't know, I'm changing the terminology back and forth. They've given them unique things that only they do. So it's like a 5% damage buff that they put on the boss. Only demon hunters have it for magical damage. And you're like, okay, I guess I need to bring a specific spec, which sucks. I don't like that. I think it's bad.
Yeah, it seems like there's certain classes that are just auto locks, and then there's like X number of flex classes that you build around.
Yeah.
I do hear a lot about people memeing on Moonkins. What's the meme on Moonkins?
Completely broken.
But they won't tell you that.
Yeah, I mean, they cry all the time on Twitter that they get, every time they get a small nerf, they cry, but they're generally broken because actually, great timing. Have you played with the scholars lately and the AoE speed buff that they give?
Yeah,
very powerful.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like I was like, oh my god, finally we have this in Final Fantasy, because that's what the druids have in World of Warcraft. So then you just bring a bunch of them, because the only other spec that can do that is shamans, which generally you don't bring too many. Maybe you'll have 1 or 2. But yeah, druids. Bring 4 of them, 5 of them. Every mechanic that happens, hey, pop the sprint. Everyone does the mechanic much easier. Very, very easy. Then they have like really good cooldowns. They have really good survivability. They can not die from mechanics by going bear form, which increases their health, etc. It's like they can do everything. Yeah, and also they have Innervate, which gives healers free mana, basically. Yeah, that's it makes sense lore-wise, but yeah, I mean, there's no mechanic in the game that will prevent you from starting Moonkins. That's the problem. So if you're another ranged, that's who you're competing with. I mean, and it's tough. It's tough, especially when there's, I think, how many is it? 12 classes times 3. I think there's 36 specs in the game.
Yep.
Demon has 2 and Druid has 4, so I think there's 36. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, good luck balancing that.
39.
And
Yeah. Going back to what you were talking about before, with the sort of roles within WoW and the way that you'll build your composition, the concept of swapping out a tank for a DPS or a healer for a DPS in Final Fantasy and progression is so obscene because it completely breaks the fights if you do that. One of the
Yes.
things that
Yeah.
that people always think of is that you see a group, and there's a specific JP group who always does this every tier. They'll post like a week one solo heal of the final fight, and at that point, it's not really actually about the healer. Like they're doing throughput, that's great, but healers are really strong in this game. The
other guy.
difficult part about that is that everybody is now randomly getting healer mechanics, which that's the difference there, right? You just it's not something you can do at all in progression. Like so, you're definitely shoehorned into the way that you have to build a comp because of it. But like the difference there of just swapping, like how could you do that? It's bringing in an extra tank. Like imagine what that would do to some mechanics in Final Fantasy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a double-edged sword, right? So we have everything tied to roles, which, as Roger highlighted earlier, well, I guess you were talking about class kit, but also some maybe tying some WoW mechanics to roles. Well, I guess before I talk about this, Roger, you can tell me, when it comes to like WoW fight mechanics, are they typically role-based? Like I know that there's like
Mhm.
melee healers and ranged healers, and melee healers get melee mechanics, and ranged healers get range mechanics. But how are there specific? Do they still do the thing where it's like they have melee mechanics and they have range mechanics, or is it all like a range threshold? Like how does it function these days?
There's a mix for sure, so they can do both.
Mm.
A lot of times there's also mechanics that just never target tanks, but they can target anyone else. So that's another one. They kind of have changed this over time, right? So you will see all kinds of this targeting, like the ones you mentioned, but it almost feels like it's phases that Blizzard developers go through. Like in the past, it used to
Okay.
be very, very prevalent that it was one of the ranged get it, and you need to have X amount of range to be outside
Right.
before it will start randomly targeting a melee as well. So that's when we started, we coined the term like Super 7. So we all needed 7 ranged outside, and then
Okay.
everyone else can stack on the boss. But as soon as you had 6 ranged outside, then it could target whoever. So that's a little bit in the past. Recently, I think they've generally just gone with either you're a melee or you're a ranged. And healers are, as you said, some are considered melee, some are considered ranged. This has also changed in the past, where Paladin specifically, I think, used to be considered ranged, but then they
But they needed to be in
made
melee.
them. Yeah, which is all like in the back end, like you don't know any of this information, right? Like you just see it. And then they also started doing a lot with proximity, like this is the closest target gets it, or one of the furthest away targets. That's also something that they're doing. Yeah, they play around with it. They've kind of gone away though from the Super 7 that I said earlier. Yeah.
In Final Fantasy, when they play around with that, usually it's a result of it's a different dev. So
Yeah.
they'll have
Mhm.
different developer cycles. Like you'll have one guy who's working on 2 to 3 bosses, and that's his workload, and then another person's working on 2 to 3 bosses, and that's their workload. Sometimes they're in the same tier, so it's not one guy doing an entire tier. So sometimes the philosophy changes from like in between the second and third bosses. Do you
Mm.
in WoW is it similar where it's like one raid each like a bunch of
Mhm.
different bosses are designed by one guy and then like maybe the last 3 are designed by another guy and like the philosophies are way different? Does that happen a lot?
And so it's hard to tell because I don't think with so many bosses it's kind of hard to know
That's
because
fair.
they probably do like one developer might do the first, the third, and the seventh, and then it's hard to notice like patterns, especially because it's not necessarily also a strict order that you do the bosses. What you do see a lot of times is inspiration from previous bosses, though. So there is a boss actually coming up which we haven't seen at all. Spoiler alert if anyone wants to be completely blind. But there is a boss coming up, um, fully blind, didn't test it on PTR, but you see like the abilities and you're like, oh wait, this is like Algalon. Um, so it reminds you of a boss from like 10 years ago.
Mhm.
And then you kind of see how they looked at that boss, probably they took some inspiration, they changed things around. Um, yeah, it's there's almost always some kind of reference you can make to understand the targeting or whatever it is, right? Like it's almost subconscious, though, I would say. It's not. Yeah, it's. Oh, and also I think a lot of their development team, like they've changed, right? Like there's new people. Like so, 5 years ago was quite a lot of other people doing bosses compared to now. I'm pretty sure they brought one new guy in this year, though. I will say this. I have a big suspicion because do you know what the Dungeon Journal is in World of Warcraft?
I remember you telling me about this a little
I
bit.
told you about it, but yeah, just
Yeah, go ahead.
so there's a Dungeon Journal which basically explains all the abilities of a boss. Not really. You can't just read it and be like, "Oh, I get it. Let's just kill the boss." But you read the tooltips basically. Now, generally speaking, that's very impersonal, right? When you read the abilities, there's an overview. There's like lore there as well if you want on a different tab. But when you go to abilities, it's very this does AoE. It picks random. It picks a target and does AoE 8 yards around him for 30k damage, and you're like, okay, I get it. But then there's this one of the bosses. You see the craziest descriptions I've ever seen, ever before, right? So you go boss 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You're like, yep, I get it. And then you go to the boss number 6, and it's like the cosmic reflection bursts into particles, and then it regenerates in this, and you're like, what is this mechanic, dude? What am I doing? What? So yeah, you can usually tell from the from the Dungeon Journal that it's a new developer or not.
That's pretty interesting. So they aren't really too public about who designs what fight, who their battle designers are, and what they're doing behind the scenes. They're pretty private about it.
I wonder if that's better. I don't know. I can't decide.
I mean, I think I've asked in the past when, like at BlizzCon, like sometimes they will tell you, but they don't go out of their way. And also, obviously, they are a team, right? I don't think it's one person. One person is probably in charge of the boss, but they must talk a lot between themselves. Yeah.
Like for Final Fantasy, they always do it way after the fact, right? They usually
like a whole year later,
yeah, like a year or two. They see what the reception. I am assuming. I'm making lots of assumptions here. They see what the reception is on the fight, and if it's something, they'd be like, "Oh, this guy designed this fight. He's amazing." They'll tell you.
but if everybody hates it, they won't tell you.
They're not going to tell you who created it.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, and they do that at the fan fest and everything. It's pretty interesting. That's how we learn a lot of stuff, and we learn what developers are doing, what and how they're thinking and everything. Go ahead.
The only reason I keep highlighting this. Sorry, I'm hijacking the show a lot, but I get to talk to you and Sfia whenever I want. I so rarely get to talk to Roger, so I'm taking full advantage. But the only reason I was interested in that kind of stuff is like very few times historically we've caught wind of maybe like who the developer of an upcoming fight is, and it actually can tell you how to prepare a little bit for it. So because certain developers have a track record of doing things certain ways, and when you keep up with like who's who in the Final Fantasy dev side of things, you can start to find patterns and things, and it helps out a little bit. But what I have noticed, a fun tie into what something you said earlier about how you think there's maybe like some new people on the team these days. I actually feel the same way about Final Fantasy because I have a lot of good to say about Endwalker, but there is also some of the negatives I have, and some of the negatives are just like clearly a group of new people that joined in recently that are repeating mistakes of developers that worked and left like 5 years ago, because it's just like very similar mistakes that were made and fixed back then, but they're new now, so they don't know that they're mistakes yet. So we're gonna have history repeat itself a little bit, and we'll have that go on for about 6 months until it all gets ironed out. Can you
give an example of that?
Yeah, I was going to ask an example. Yeah.
It has a lot to do with the job design. I feel like some of the way that I can't remember the specific example off the top of my head. I was talking about it with my team like 2 weeks ago. Specific to job design, there are some. Was it the tanks? Might have been the tanks. I can't remember. But specific to job design, there are some things that I wish were not the way they are, and I'm hoping that they get adjusted over the next like 5
As
months.
broad as you can make it,
Yeah,
man.
I
That's-
can't remember the specific example off the top of my head,
Okay,
so
okay.
that's just what I'm
I
leaving
mean,
it
I
at.
know one. Make Baraz give you a proc of Shadowbite. Come on, bro. That's or am I saying it
Makes
correct?
sense.
Oh God,
no,
yeah.
you're right.
Shadowbite is fucking miserable right now. It's awful.
Come on, man. Like, it's like a tease, yeah. It's a tease. You're like, oh, you pressed it. I honestly feel like not only does it not give you a stack, but it must nerf your chance to proc it. I'm convinced because as soon as I press it, no proc. It just doesn't happen.
I'll try to remember what was
It's
bugging me.
a
But go
debuff
ahead,
for
yeah,
sure,
go
man.
ahead.
So I
Yeah.
actually have a question, bringing it a little more on topic for Roger.
Mhm.
This is your first time doing a global release raid tier.
Mhm.
What was that experience like, and how different was it for you?
I mean, it was awesome. It was also really nice to live hear like, oh, they killed the first boss, and we could compare very realistically between the two. And we also had an excuse almost compared to previous times to be a little bit more serious, right? Like we still were not tryharding crazily, but we're like, okay, let's don't over fixate about a little bit uptime here and there, like no one cares. Just be a little bit more progress oriented. And it felt better, I would say, compared to the previous times, just because we could see the progress going forward, not getting stuck like we did, not regressing, I guess, as much. Like I don't think we were suddenly, oh, we're just chain wiping and nothing is improving. So it felt really good. It felt really like just like a race, yeah. Like I don't know what else to say. In WoW, it's also like that, but I think because of how short this is and because you never really get stuck and you also don't have to go out and do split runs or whatever, it's a little bit more, how can I say, more exciting, I guess. Whereas in WoW, I think it gets like that towards the end, more or less. So
Okay.
yeah, it was really cool. It was really cool. I guess the one thing that I will say, since you said that as well, I didn't really like that much the whole. I don't know. I almost wish like you could maybe craft your gear like a day before, because it feels like that's another like whole section where, I mean, it's kind of cool. Like the crafting system is cool. Don't get me wrong. And I guess it's like a 1% issue kind of thing. But it kind of feels annoying having to deal with the crafting of the gear when you want to progress the fights. Like if they just unlocked it a day early, I would have preferred it. I don't think they'll do it, but I'm just saying that was a little bit
You got to
of
get a crafting team.
Yeah, I know, but it's like, I mean, we had someone helping us, and really thankful to that person. But I don't know. It's just I bought a lot of gems, by the way. I oh my god, can they
The materia, yeah.
a lot of materia. I was switching servers for like 3 days, trying to get a little bit cheap price on the gems. Oh my god, so much clicking. Oh, please
Well, that's because
update the auction
you were
house.
last minute Andy. If you were if you were doing your hunts, if you were buying it as the days the expansion first launched, this would have been a lot less painful.
I mean, I get it, but I'm just asking for one small change. WoW also didn't have this, but they did it recently. Update the auction house so I can put how many of a gem I want, and it just buys that amount instead of having individual, like, oh, this guy posted 10 gems, so you either buy
Okay.
10 or nothing. Like WoW had this, but they changed it now, and it's so much better. I just
That was
put
a
a number.
giant auction house update, though. It was like a giant update.
It was, yeah. I would appreciate that at least. If I mean, maybe I tell Scribe to do it next time. I'm not.
That's
I
fine.
remembered what
Yeah.
my complaint was, by the way. I couldn't remember it on the spot, but it was Astro. Some of their Astro design is just like 5 steps backwards to things that we tried back in Astro Heavensward design that are just like, why are we going back to this level of RNG? Like, why are Arcana the way they are? I just hate it. I think it's, I don't know. I don't like it. It's something that they did in past years tying this much RNG to the job, but the job is already strong for other reasons, so it's going to get glossed over. Like the issue with the design of it is going to get glossed over, but I just dislike it. I don't think it's good.
Okay. Okay. I do want to ask this. Oh, go ahead, Roger. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say with Astro, I just don't like. Ever since I switched to Bard, I need to get the Royal Flash to get a card. Yeah, it's not good.
I mean,
I don't.
that's fair. At least
Yeah.
you're not back in the old days where you had 6 cards and only one of them mattered. So, anyways, with the servers coming up at the exact same time and kind of being a part of that kind of global release and everything, there is the other factor, of course. Final Fantasy has had so much attention on it recently that there are going to be server issues, and there was some server issues with some groups. Did you experience any, Roger?
Yeah, my team just inted hard, and I was waiting for them to log in. No, actually, it was me, dude. That's so bad.
Oh, was it you?
That's so bad.
Okay.
So I got at the very start. I don't know. My game just crashed like 5 times. Like I just tried to log in, but it wouldn't. I don't know. Just closed. So then I got, I think, an hour queue, maybe half an hour queue, maybe half
On
an hour
launch day?
queue. On literally on the launch.
Raid
the-
launch
I
or
had-
expansion launch?
No, raid launch.
Oh, raid.
On
Okay.
raid launch, I think I mean there was another person as well. So, but I was the slowest, 30 minutes, and I think the other person was like 20 minutes. So a little bit delayed. Took my team used that time to buy with their tomes the material for the crafting, so it wasn't that bad. Then I got a blue screen at 8 p.m. and then I was in an hour queue. It was not good,
Ooh.
I must say. And then what was it? And then the second day, we were on this last boss. We were looking on footage. I AFK timed out, and I had another hour queue. Yeah, it was like we took a break for lunch, and then
Right.
we're looking at footage as well. So yeah, it wasn't that good. Now, I think the big lesson that we learned, and correct me if I'm wrong, if we had moved all of us to the least populated server of the data center, isn't that the play? Like you don't lose anything, right? Like you just make sure everyone moves there before launch, and then you just have way less queues, even if something goes bad.
The
Do you
issue
mean
then is getting
Go ahead.
crafted gear. At that point, getting your crafted gear, because the crafters can't gather from nodes off of their home server, so they would have to do some shenanigans to get their gear to you. But that's the biggest roadblock there, logistically.
Now, does he
I
mean
see.
world visit, or do you mean actually transfer your characters?
No, world visit.
World visit. Okay. Yeah. Then, like Sfia said, you have some crafting logistics that are a problem. You would have to have crafters on the world that you're visiting.
Yeah.
Ones that
the
are
thing
just
is,
their home world.
our crafter was not even from our server originally. He did also.
So he went back and forth. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what he did, honestly. I think he just stayed on our server the whole time. I don't
And
know
then
how
he
he
spent
got the
a lot of-
materials.
He spent a lot of gil.
Maybe. I think we spent like 100 mil only, though. I don't think we spent that much. I was expecting it to be
Not that bad.
more.
It's not that bad.
Maybe EU prices are a little bit better. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think that's what we will do next time, because it's just frustrating, right? Yeah, it was badly timed as well. Did you have any, like, did it happen to any of the top teams? Any issues with the servers?
Yeah, we had a couple of DCs, but because of the us moving around, we avoided queues almost entirely. We had a PC crash and a DC, but that lost us maybe total 5 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's not too bad at all.
Yep. And I expect it to be like 10 times better going into the next race, just because the curve of like how many people are wanting to log in will start to die off a little bit, and the servers will be able to free up a bit.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
Ultimate should be
what they
different.
need. I understand that they had a huge surge of players and they stopped selling the game. I'm guessing by the time the next race is up, they will have solved that issue. And shouldn't they at that point enable the 5 minute or something protection, that you don't lose your queue if you just DC and you log back in like next minute or within 5 minutes?
That shit should already be here. I don't know where it is.
Yeah, I think they removed it to like
nonsense.
lower the queues, right? But
Yeah,
it's
but
just...
where is it now?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, good
I
question.
don't know. It should be here, but I would hope at least.
Yeah.
I think they said they did an announcement. What was it, a couple weeks ago now, of when they're adding their new server infrastructure.
Mhm.
And it's not slated until, at least for the NA side of things, it's not slated till like late this year. So
Oh,
we're gonna see like 1 to 2 more tiers with the current systems in place. However, I do feel that there will probably be a little bit less congestion
Yeah.
around the next 2 tiers. Like Endwalker launch was huge. It was
hmm
unprecedentedly huge. So yeah, we have some of that
Hmm.
taking part in it. It'll be bad, but it won't be crazy like it was. I think
Yeah.
this was just
yeah,
fucking crazy.
it was pretty crazy.
And there's not going to be as many teams racing Ultimate the way that they did for Savage, just because it's a lot more of a commitment overall.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably not.
So a couple of questions. You know, we're almost at 2 hours, which is like crazy to me. Uh, but there's a couple of questions I just wanted to ask in general for all you guys. The raid ended. You were feeling one way about the raid tier and everything else. Now it's been like a handful of weeks. Do we still feel the same, or has any of the glamour died off, or do you have more respect for some things that you've seen in the fight? Now that some time has passed.
I'll let Sfia chime in because I keep stealing the microphone from him.
Overall opinion hasn't really changed too much. I think it was a very successful tier. Again, there's no dead fights, right? Like none of them suck, which is pretty hard for them to do, especially in an introductory tier. I like it. It hasn't been bad to re-clear. I've actually enjoyed it every single week. We're playing very little at the moment, but no, I really enjoy my time in those fights. So I give it 2 big thumbs up.
Nice. Layla, do you feel the same?
Yeah, I'm super raid loggy right now. Sfia knows this from having played with me for a while. That after a tier, I have like 3 to 4 weeks of just decompressing, just de-stress, because I mean, it's a lot of prep that goes into this shit. There's like, I mean, we especially like in expansion launch specifically, like Prog
Mm-hmm.
doesn't start at Savage release. Prog starts at expansion launch. So it's like yeah, we only got 1 day of Savage Prog, but in reality, it was kind of 4 weeks and 1 day of Savage
Mm-hmm.
Prog because there's just so much stuff you're doing every day, all day. So relaxing. So I haven't put a ton of thought into whether or not I still like the bosses. What I can say, and if you follow anything I say on Twitter or on my stream, this won't be news to you. Uh, I am very much not a fan of 8.5 minute end bosses. Where this trend started, I don't know, but I hope it dies. It is so short. It started like we went straight from Oracle right into Hesperos Phase 2, and both are like 8 minutes, and both of them have these like pseudo victory laps at the end of a full minute. So you're really only getting like, I don't know, like maybe 7.5 minutes of actual mechanics. Because I mean, Curtain Call 2 is just Curtain Call 1, but again,
Mm-hmm.
so you just have like 7.5 minutes of a boss. And with Oracle, you only had like what, like 7 minutes of a boss after Advanced World after Triple Apocalypse. So yeah, like the door bosses exist, and you're supposed to count them all as one fight, but I don't. I want like an actual 13-minute end boss. Punish me for wiping. Send me back to minute 1. Um, I hope that in 6.2 we get one of those again.
So
You
you
want the
want eight
big,
minutes plus 13 minutes?
No. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay, let me rephrase. I don't
Sure.
like door bosses. Let me go back
Okay.
to that. I
Okay.
don't like
Okay.
door
Okay.
bosses. Um, I would rather we just go back to 13 and a half,
yeah,
13-minute end bosses. It just feels like a more natural progression cycle to me. Maybe this is just a very like opinionated take. Maybe there's no right or wrong answer here. There probably isn't, but that's how I want it. I
Okay.
want it my way.
Roger.
um, yeah. Let me quickly talk about the raid overall. I think first boss was amazing. Also, I think like even for farm, I think it's really cool. And I think it's like people I remember saying, "Oh, you should do Eden's Gate. It's such a great introduction to raiding in Final Fantasy." I think the P1S is a great boss as a first boss to introduce someone to Savage raiding. Personally, at least, I think it's
Well, we
it's
got to
simple.
talk about P1S, by the way. Sorry to interrupt, but keep
Yeah,
going.
okay. I'll keep
Okay.
going then. I'll keep going. But yeah, really like that boss. P2S, I didn't like the setting so much, like the atmosphere of the room. But I think the boss is fine. I don't have an issue with it. And then P3S, I thought it would suck a lot for bards, timing wise, because the boss goes away, and I hate when bosses go away, generally speaking. But it actually turned out pretty okay, timing wise. So I actually enjoyed that boss a lot more than I expected it to be. So yeah, I think that's cool. And then I did not enjoy the door boss as much. I will say that. Like, I think that's my least favorite part of re-clearing. It's like, oh my god, we have to do this. Oh, and then Pinax comes, and yeah, I know, get better. Maybe there's this strat for uptime, and maybe we can improve a little bit. I don't know. It's just that door boss has nothing like really interesting to me. It's just like, can you survive the Pinax 2 times? Okay, and then you kill the boss. Like, the rest of the mechanics, actually, it took us a long time to understand the mechanic of like sucking in the thing on the sword and then putting it on the cloak. We were so like, we wiped so long until we figured that out. It was embarrassing almost. But I mean, once you figure that out, yeah, the boss, I don't like it. But as soon as you get through, you get to the last phase. I actually really enjoyed it. Yeah, I mean, I'll agree with Klops that maybe they should have just done that version just longer. I think that would have been cool. And the what did I want to say? Oh, I mean, I wouldn't mind also a long boss like Shiva or Titan. I think those were really awesome as well to progress. Oh yeah, one thing I want to say is, do you like the fact that with these door bosses, it almost feels like I don't know, something doesn't click, right? It feels like it's a system that I would expect a little bit more refinement. Because right now you're like, once you've gone through the door boss once, then you don't kill the boss, obviously, the first time. I think it took us 4 or 5 times to get to phase 2 to kill it.
The duty
But
timer,
after,
is that what you're talking about?
yeah, like the timer, because then you go back in. Oh, we wiped 2 times. Okay, let's restart. Like,
Yep.
I don't know. It just doesn't feel good. Maybe just make it so that once you do the door boss, you just have X amount of time no matter what. Like, it refreshes. Maybe you give, I don't know, 90 minutes only, but it just is. That's it
Yep.
every time. It just feels weird. Yeah.
Instance limitations is going to be the short answer. However, that's not an excuse. I 100% agree. I think that the current design of door bosses is so like just a nonsense. The fact that you have the best play to zone out and zone in, rezone in, and that's just an accepted
Yeah.
norm. Like we've just accepted that as being norm, like a normal thing over the years, and we don't like people don't really think about it. People need to take a step back and realize just how badly designed that is. We shouldn't have to do that. The game should just do that for us. There's no skill involved in zoning out and zoning back in. It's not like you're taking away player agency. This is the one instance where I want them to make something easier. Just make this higher quality of life. It's just silly. Again, it's another reason why I hate door bosses. But what I will say is that for specifically for Hesperos, had because you're talking about how like the Pinax, I don't know how you say it, but you're saying how it just kind of repeats and feels kind of whatever lackluster, and that you maybe don't necessarily care for the boss very much. If we just combined phase 1, phase 2, cut off the boss at let's say right after the towers. Is that? Let me think about that. It goes towers into second Pinax, right? Yeah, like if we cut off the boss right at the tower, right after the towers, that's around the 4:30 mark. 5 minute mark, I think.
5 minutes, I think, roughly. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's
Yeah.
right after your right after your third set of
Exactly.
twos.
Yeah.
And if you cut off the boss right there, have it transition right into Hesperos phase 2. You're going straight into Act 1. You've done 2 things. Number 1, solved my hatred of splitting up 2 8-minute bosses. Number 2, you don't have a boring last 3 minutes of the door boss that you've already done. There's nothing new and interesting about it. It's literally just Pinax Electric Boogaloo 2, whatever the fuck. And then number 3, you get you fix all the issues with Hesperos Phase 2 just being way too short. Because now you're around that 5-minute mark, you tack on the 8-minute 25 seconds of Hesperos Phase 2, boom, 13:25 fight. So what I wonder is if that was the actual original intention of the boss. And that when they because they do this a lot, they design bosses, then they go back and they cut stuff up. I wonder if that was the original intention of the boss. You just right at the 5-minute mark, you go straight into Act 1.
Maybe, yeah. I have no idea.
Yeah.
Because that would be a 13:25. It'd be very nice. I think it'd be very nice. Like you have like this phase transition to kind of normalize your cooldowns, and then you go straight into fighting the boss. That would have been sick. But
Okay.
what do I know?
Fair.
I'm just sitting here. I'm not over there
Washed
designing.
up gamer, only
Yeah.
rank 4.
What do I know?
Yeah.
What the fuck? That's messed up, dude.
That's what Layla says all the time. He calls himself a washed up gamer.
It's true until I make it not true.
Keep in mind, World 4th in Final Fantasy is actually way harder to get compared to World 4th in WoW because it's only 8 players, right? So you're basically top 32 players, whereas in WoW you'd be top 80.
Yeah,
I mean,
the size of the pool is different in the two environments.
I don't know even at this point. Maybe.
Oh,
maybe
okay.
it's
Actually,
evening
fair.
out, yeah.
Sure, fair.
Yeah.
I mean, we could just say, hey, if it was 40. Hopefully it holds. We'll give it a couple of minutes, and I completely apologize, guys. I've never had that happen.
It's very
Ever.
uncharacteristic. So yeah. You're usually the goat.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it.
It happens. It happens. It's all good.
Okay, so chat looks like they think it's back, so I think that's good. It's good. I don't remember what I said or where it cut me off, but I think it had something to do with the 40-man content, right? If we were comparing 40-man, like a raid, it would take 1, 2, 3, how many groups? 5 groups.
Yeah.
So top 5 is technically world first.
I mean, yeah, but we're not. We're not actually. Our teams right now is about 31, but it is Mythic is 21, right? So
True.
I mean, I guess. Yeah.
2.5 teams.
2.5 teams. 2.5. Yeah.
Okay. So sorry.
Actually,
go ahead.
No. I mean, everyone is good in chat. It's just yeah, it's all good. It's all stuff happens. At least there's no queue on tweets, so we're fine. Do you have backup players? Like, are you pretty set on your? I don't know if you call it statics. I mean, but are you pretty set on these are the 8 players? No matter what comp we have to play, these are the 8 people we go with, or do you and you just adjust, like depending on what comp you want to play? You never have a 9th person.
Well, you have a 9th person, but they aren't technically a raider. They are like support.
Oh yeah,
so
please! It's not a raider.
Whoa!
I mean, like they're not in the instance, right? That's what I'm saying. But no, because you can multi-class so easy in this game. It's more about the roster than it is about the jobs.
I'm just giving Sfia shit. Everybody knows what he meant by that. That Cleese is fine.
Yeah.
They would swap. They have swapped Cleese in for stuff when like somebody's missing. So justice for Cleese. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. What topic? Were we on a topic? And I don't want to go into another topic and completely cut us off from what we were talking about earlier. I was so,
Well, I know we're deep into the show. We're like 2+ hours deep. I have an infinite number of things that I
you
could
wanted to talk about P1S like really bad. So could you do it?
I don't want to tie people to their keyboards though in prison. Give them a prison sentence. The only thing that I was curious about, and because I know Sfia's got to go, but the only thing I was really wanting to hear about is people's opinions on temperance in P1S. This is a wild one.
Which one is that?
Temperance.
Sorry, I don't know the names.
Sure, Temperance is the hot and cold phase of P1S. The fire
The one
crystals,
with
the
the ice
ice
cubes
crystals.
or the
Yes,
ground?
the cubes,
Okay.
the cubes, and the 8 towers.
Mhm.
This is so not like Square Enix, that design, and I would just like to poll people's opinions on it. I know my opinion. I know my team's opinion. I don't know other people's opinions, and I really would like to know, how do you feel about the fact that there are, you know, 2 permutations that are extremely obtuse outside of like normal way that they would design a first boss.
I
Like very
think
solvable, yes, but very, you have to agree, very obtuse.
I think they accidentally made a mechanic harder than they meant to.
Yep, that's my take as well. But I don't want to influence opinions. Carry on.
I don't know if Sfia had more to say.
No, there's
I mean,
nothing more than that. Yeah.
I mean, I can tell you, like, for us, it was just we didn't even think too hard. We're like, because we were a bit confused about the purple ones. We're like, what is that, right? Like the middle purple ones. Do you know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
yeah, we didn't really understand what's going on there. Took us a couple of tries, I'll be honest. But then we were like, okay, everyone, since the north and south one, it was usually like the one red, one blue in between. We were like, okay, well, everyone just deal with your own square and then just change your color if you need to, and that's it. We didn't even think like, oh, it doesn't work with the tanks, and then we're like, oh, whatever, just take it, just survive. I mean, who cares? It's just it happened so naturally that we didn't even think about it, and we're like, okay. I mean, it didn't even happen
Yep.
all the time. So if it felt like one of those mechanics where, damn dude, like I don't really get it, but it works. Let's just go with it, right? Because we didn't know that there was only like 2 different variations, and then also it might start from the top or bottom. We didn't even know it can start from the top or bottom, and we killed the boss. I think it was, I don't know. We just YOLO'd it, yeah.
So the reason yeah, go ahead,
Mhm.
finish. Go ahead.
It sounds like a mechanic they could have done a lot more of if they put it later on in the raid. Do you know what I mean?
Mm,
But because it's first boss, you have to dumb it down, and then
it should be
it's too
dumbed down,
yeah.
but it's not, because 2 of those permutations are
Mhm.
very much not dumb. They're very, very like, I think, obscure in how to actually solve them for a first boss of an expansion.
Mm.
The reason I bring it up is, the funny thing is, if they change the south tile to be I forget if it's 1 or 2 crystals different, the mechanic, all permutations are solved naturally individually.
Mhm.
So my opinion, and I've really gone back and forth before actually giving an opinion on it, because I don't want to just take the easy road out and say, oh, they screwed up, because down here in 4th place, we have to figure out how to get better after every tier. So I want to make sure that I'm trying, like, I'm not misunderstanding like how they design a boss, or how they design a mechanic. And I have just finally decided that they fucked up that south tile. And I don't know
Yeah.
how they missed those 2 permutations, but it's just very uncharacteristic of a first boss of an expansion, considering the fact that you change 1 tile and the mechanic is now perfectly solved naturally individually. So I
Mhm.
don't know. Now, what I will say is, I think I saw it in chat, and I agree with this statement. Being the player who flexes every week as the tank or the DPS does make the boss more fun. And I would highly recommend to anyone listening, if you're bored going through your clears, assign a new guy to be the flex every week. Give them something spicy to do. It just makes it more. I don't know. It just makes it more fun for them. And then sometimes you might pull the boss and you get 2 of the boring permutations, but whatever. Make them do it again next week. Spice things up. Spice up life a little bit.
I will tell our BLM to adjust. I want to see
Okay.
how he
Yes.
reacts to that one.
He would love to hear
That's gonna
that.
be a good
Yes.
one. Yeah, no, I do agree though. I think now that you mention it, it's probably a mistake, right? Because otherwise,
think
why is
so.
it only that
Yeah.
2 people need to switch and no one, like everyone else, just does the same thing every time? It's just those 2 people. So it
I think
sounds
it's a mistake.
definitely
There are strategies that involve like 3 people switching that are a little bit, still it's only 3. It's just very,
yeah.
very weird. It's weird because it's surprising to me that they would make that mistake. they've been very good about things like that historically. So maybe new guy, maybe getting his feet wet a little bit. Who knows? Or her feet. Who knows? But
So-
yeah, that's mostly my things I wanted to ask about P1. Just it's by
Gotta
far
get off
the
your chest.
I had to. I would be just torn if I didn't.
Fair.
Mhm.
Fair. I do
No,
want to
I-
ask. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I had nothing else. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
okay,
no.
okay. I wanted to ask. You have a pretty cool event that's happening tomorrow, Roger, where you're actually facing off against Liquid, in it was a raid battle of sorts, right?
Right. Yeah. So we had a charity event last Race to World First in World of Warcraft, and we hit a goal where we said if we reach this amount, we'll do a raid race between the two teams. So we're gonna be doing that tomorrow. It is a little bit more fun oriented, right? Like it's not gonna be. It's still a race, but there are some twists. It's not just a speed race like full, like you're used to it. So yeah, but we did also a race relatively recently with a Chinese team, which was pure speed race, like no extra sauce. That was also a lot of fun, and I think that brought me back to like you can still have a lot of fun in World of Warcraft. It's just the incentives are not there.
You got to make it
or
right.
like-
Yeah.
There's a lot of incentives to not do the fun part for us at least.
I
Sadly,
think Final
and we have
Fantasy
to
is not much
split-
different.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe, I guess. Yeah, maybe you're right. It's but at least the gearing in Final Fantasy is very like it feels good gearing up. I don't know
It does.
compared to WoW. So yeah, we're doing that tomorrow. It should be a lot of fun, and hoping we can get the community excited about it. Yeah, it's. I think, man, the time zones are gonna kill me. I can tell you the time.
It's
in
12
Europe.
p.m. PT, I think, Pacific. I think I saw that listed somewhere, right?
Okay, it's I think 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. CT, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think 9 p.m. CT. I think. Okay.
You guys should all watch that if you want to watch. Roger, you're fantastic, by the way. I love having you on the show. You bring a lot of really good energy here, and just being in a community and being part of the competitive kind of rating scene in some level of regard is awesome. You and Echo and everyone, especially and Team Liquid now that they're here too. It's amazing. I do. There is Phase Temperance, by the way. Phase Temperance has done some stuff before in the community, and they might start some stuff up again. I don't know. If there's enough dead time, I'm sure somebody will make events like Gauntlet events or Hell Mode events where you're making things really challenging and trying to make teams figure out how to solve certain adjusted mechanics, if that makes any sense, or do it in a certain way.
That sounds cool. So you put like some. I think I heard about it, right? Like where you go, let's say, with three healers or something, right? Like, and you have to adjust. Or
Sort
is
of.
that like an example?
Yeah, that's
okay.
I mean, they do other things like they say, hey, you have to solve this mechanic, but you have to fail this mechanic, right? You have to fail
I
this to
see.
get the disadvantage, then you have to pass the next mechanic with that
Or
disadvantage.
you can use like a quarter of the arena or something like that.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those are
That
fun.
sounds cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we might have a lot more of that coming up in Walker throughout. I know we're all hoping for 2 ultimates. You know, we're kind of crossing our fingers and hope that actually goes through. If we do, then that means we have 2 more races this year.
I'm not holding my breath.
Or no, maybe 3 more races. Sorry. You never know. This next one hopefully will be really hard, though. I mean, they've spent a lot of time on Dragon Song. It has to be like some like crazy complex like masterpiece.
Yeah, I mean the
right?
rationale is that they've had the Dragon Song assets for so long because it was supposed to come out so long ago.
Yeah.
That people are expecting a second ultimate because of supposedly how little they had to do getting Dragon Song ready.
Right.
But that could just be, just what they're saying. We have no idea what's going on internally. It's literally a coin flip.
I do want to
yeah.
also say if they
Yoshi
confirm.
did.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Yoshi did confirm 2, and that they want to do 3.
So I want to say, even though they confirmed 2, it doesn't mean we're gonna have 2.
That's kind of what I'm getting
yeah,
at.
yeah.
Like they've said, we've had confirmations tons of times before, and it, shit happens. I'm not blaming them, by the way. I have no my fear of only having one ultimate doesn't come from a place of negativity.
No,
It's
we
literally
got you.
just
got
I'm
you,
setting
we
my
burned.
expectations. I'm setting my expectations because I've been burned before. So
Yeah, that's fair. But that being said, there's tons of stuff in Final Fantasy coming up, and it sounds like Echo's gonna want to be a part of it if they can be a part of it, right? After having their first taste of it.
Yeah, I think we'll continue, just hopefully a little bit better next time, right? Like we just improve. I don't think we're gonna drastically change our style. And hopefully, I mean, ideally, I would like us, if possible, to break into the top 20 by the end of this expansion. You know, like
Easy.
on the third Savage tier, if we can achieve that, I'll be extremely happy. I don't know.
I
We'll
completely
see.
believe in you guys. You are a very solid and fun team. But all right, well then, I guess we can go ahead and start doing our last bits here. I know Sfia, you had a wild night last night, and it's kind of
Don't know what you're
playing.
talking about.
But anyways, Sfia, I'll let you go first here with kind of like the closing up bits. Just who you are, where people can find you, all that great stuff. Shout outs.
All right. Sure, I can do that thing. My Twitter is @FFXIV. My Twitch is just Sfia. Shout outs to my team, TPS. Proud of the lads. And cheers for having me on, Frosty.
Simple and easy, man. Simple and easy. I hope you get some sleep after.
I'm going now. I've done my bit.
He's out. All right, Klops, you want to go?
yeah, always a pleasure to be on. The only thing I'll say, because I hope people understand anything, and I think I say this for literally anybody that comes on the show. If ever anything is critical towards the game, it's always coming from a place of being constructively critical or constructive criticism. If we didn't like the game, we wouldn't waste time being critical. It would literally be a waste of my energy. We would just do it. We would just do something else, right? So it's always just because we like the game that if we ever have anything negative to say, that's the reason. As backwards as that may sound.
No,
But
it's-
Endwalker, for what it's worth, with the exception of the class balance and things, I think has been an enjoyment. The class balance and the queues. Those are the two obviously glaring negatives of Endwalker launch. So the fight design, the only thing I didn't like was the last boss fight length. All the other bosses I thought were bangers. And maybe the temperance thing that we talked about a little bit. So I am very much looking forward to what they do for next Savage tier, and obviously looking forward to Ultimate. I haven't done an Ultimate since 2017.
oh, geez, like 5 years.
Uwu was the last Ultimate that I progged, because I didn't prog T. We were already gone by then. So it's been a long time for me. So I'm like itching.
Okay.
So shout out to the boys. Also, sorry to keep talking so much, but tangent. Shout out to the boys for putting up with my bard for like 4 months, because I had to role swap to a job that I had never played before, like 6 months ago, and they went through the fucking gulag with me, man. They went through the trenches, and they had the patience of gods. And I don't think many people would have had as much patience as they did, because I was bad when I started. So big shout out to the boys. They know what I'm talking about. Because I love playing with them. Sfia knows how ride or die I am for those guys, and for Sfia included as well. So always shout out to Sfia as well. Gone as a teammate, but not as a close homie. And shout out to you, Frosty, obviously. If you are interested in following me, KlopsGG on socials. That's it.
Okay. Real quick question: are the boys going to go for World Race and Ultimate as well? You think?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, we have. It's weird. We have like new problems that we've never had before, but we fixed old problems. So now we just have to fix the new problems. But I think we've all decided that they're very fixable. So we're gonna keep pushing for Ultimate.
Okay. All right. Roger, last but not least, man, again, thank you for coming on. Could you tell everybody, of course, where they can find you, as they probably definitely want to do so? Any shout outs you might have?
Yeah, thank you very much, of course, for having me on the show again. It was a great pleasure. As I said, I mean, I'm sorry for talking too much. It is what it is. I'm just so excited about the game, I guess. And yeah, I mean, if you want to follow me on Twitch, it's twitch.tv/Rogerbrown, and on Twitter, Rogerbrown WoW. So that's it. But I did want to say, shout out to my team as well. Had a blast this raid, and shout out to the Final Fantasy devs, Yoshi P, the man. Great raid, great experience. Hope I see a lot more great raids like this in the future, and we're gonna keep playing them if that's the case. Also, shout out to the great physical ranged boys and girls. I'm with you. We are gonna keep blasting no matter what they say. I mean, it is what it is. Hopefully, we get some buffs moving forward, and especially machinists. I mean, I'm sorry for letting you down and switching this time, but I'm waiting for the weapon. I'm waiting. I passed my weapon because I'm a nice guy. I'm like, okay, Bard doesn't do that much. Here you go, Black Mage. You want a weapon? Take it. You want what?
How considerate
Reaper?
of you.
Here you go. Okay, I'm the last DPS now. Hopefully we get it soon, and then maybe we switch it up, go machinist, and yeah, physical ranged, awesome role. I like it a lot. Also, shout out to Klops for helping me with my Bard, even though he was saying like, oh, is new. I pestered him with a lot of questions, and he helped me out because I was also new to the job. So thank you very much, helping out, and yeah, I mean that's all. Thank you to the chat as well, being awesome, and the community in general. I think is very nice in Final Fantasy, and yeah,
Okay.
that's it.
Real quick, just before I forget, what's the Twitch that your event's going to be on tomorrow?
I think it should be. Let me double check.
Sure. I just want to make sure everybody here knows in case they want to go check it out.
Yeah, it is. It's going to be twitch.tv/YouAreRad. So it's the charity that we're doing it.
Like that in
for.
chat?
I think so. Let me click to double check. Yes, that
Okay.
should be it. So we're going to be streaming there tomorrow. And yeah, it should be a lot of fun. Hopefully. I mean, I don't know. We haven't done a race like this in a long time. So hopefully it's going to be funny. And nothing will go horribly wrong for us. I mean, maybe...
or is it just a
Sorry?
normal? Are you doing any special rules for the? Are there?
Yeah, exactly. There are gonna be some special
limitations?
rules.
Mhm.
Yeah, basically what you said earlier with like spicing up the bosses, but it's
Exciting.
also it's continuous, right?
Mhm.
I don't know. I mean, we'll see.
Mhm.
You're so used to doing a boss a certain way, and then it's like complete curveball.
Well, I think I speak
Yeah.
for everyone in Twitch chat when we hope it's a fucking train wreck because that's more fun to watch.
I know, right?
So,
I know. That's the thing. Yeah. I mean, I think without saying too much, I think we're gonna have a way for you to influence that. So
okay, we won't say too much. Okay.
yeah, no, a little bit. I'll just throw it out there. I think we'll have it so that people can donate to the charity. Of course, everything goes to charity, and then I think if you hit certain breakpoints, you give us an extra debuff, like an extra thing that we have to do. That is
Ooh,
how do you call
That's
it, right?
awesome.
Like an affix. So you can make our life a bit more miserable by donating to a great cause, or the opponents. I mean, that's also great. You can do it for Liquid. That's great. Yeah.
Oh, so is that both of you get punished? It's only one team?
No, I think I'm not sure how, because I didn't have time to look over
Sure.
it, but I think you can decide which team you want to
Oh my
punish. Let's say,
God.
right? Yeah. So
Okay.
we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Yeah.
All right.
It should be a lot of fun. It should be a lot of fun. Yeah.
With that all being said, again, I want to do a special shout out to everyone watching the show. You guys are fantastic for continuing to support this. I know we haven't been around as much recently with everything else that's going on with my life and trying to produce this and everything. We do plan to be here next week, and hopefully we'll have more information about that coming up soon. We also have a channel name change happening soon. We'll see if that goes through. I'll wait till it goes through to completely officially say that. And then, yeah, hopefully a lot more stuff cool going on this channel. But we'll have to see how that all pans out. And I do, again, thanks to all the mods. Thanks to my wife for putting up with my bullshit every weekend, doing the show. Thank you very much to the guest, of course, coming on, and the only reason this show even exists. All right. You guys all have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Remember, be good, keep cool, stay frosty. Now we all say wave and say bye.
Bye.
Hey everyone, thank you for watching the show. Of course, got to do a quick shout out to all the awesome Patreon supporters that, even though we haven't had a lot of shows recently, continue to support the show and what we do with the events, such as the World Race event, and maybe even some future PvP events. We'll see how that goes. But shout out to some organizations. Awk Morning, great PvE raid resource if you want to learn more about doing PvE in Final Fantasy XIV. Team Craft, a great crafting resource for everyone who plays Final Fantasy XIV, and Phase Temperance, a great organization that puts together events for Final Fantasy XIV for PvE. Also, some really awesome people. Dude is Antonio, D Fury, JJ, Mr. Dan, Nami, Neurodia, Psyche, and Dirk. If you guys want to support as well, if you're not already, feel free to go to our Patreon page. And you'll be able to do whatever you want there, whether it's $1, $25, anything helps. It makes a difference for what we do, and I appreciate all of it. You guys all have a wonderful day, and until next time, be good. Bye.